Chapter 1689. After calming down, Lin couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. "Why are you so sure that I can find the senior you mentioned?" A strange look appeared on the woman's face. "Because Golden Cicada once told me that you came from Mine Mountain." "Mine Mountain?" Lin Sun's black eyes flashed, and he said, "Go on." It was not surprising that Golden Cicada could see that Lin Sun was related to Mine Mountain, but why did he tell Thousand Feather Flower? The woman in red took a deep breath again, as if trying to calm herself down. Then she said with a solemn look, "The senior who taught me Taoism came from Mine Mountain. His Taoist name is Shuya, and he's the 19th successor of Mine Mountain. He should be your senior fellow apprentice." Hearing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned. The senior who enlightened Thousand Feather Flower and taught her Taoism should be his 19th senior fellow apprentice? Now, Thousand Feather Flower already had the foundation to become an emperor. How high was the cultivation of his 19th senior fellow apprentice? Senior brother Shin Kong said that since I've obtained the Grand Tao Endless Pagoda and that Tao Him, it's equivalent to obtaining the acknowledgement of the master of Mount Innerheart and being ranked 50th. But the crux is that I've only met senior brother Shin Kong up until now. Not to mention the master of Mount Innerheart. I don't even know exactly where Mount Innerheart is. Lin Sun was lost in thought for a while. Shin Kong was Shin Kong Ghost King. It was Shin Kong Ghost King who told Lin Sun some things about Mine Mountain in the city of Vain Deaths in the absolute domain of Buddha Earth. However, Lin Sun seldom came into contact with things related to Mountain of Mind and Heart in these years of cultivation. So when he suddenly heard about the matter related to Shuya, he couldn't help but feel a little unprepared. But obviously, the woman in red had recognized him as the junior fellow apprentice of Shuya, the successor of Mine Mountain. "What do you want me to do after I find Shuya?" After a long time, Lin Sun asked. Whether he admitted it or not, he had an inseparable relationship with Mine Mountain. For example, the Tower of Tao in his hand was an important weapon of Mine Mountain. For example, the battle saint technique he practiced was one of the 9 techniques of Fong and Siyuan Mountain. The woman in red took out a bamboo sword only 7 inches long and 1 finger wide. The bamboo sword had turned yellow and was full of antiquity. It was engraved with 2 ancient characters, "Listen to Snow." The woman in red held the sword with a trace of devotion and said seriously, "I want to return this sword to Shuya. Shuya once said that if we meet again someday, this sword will be a token. Listen to Snow bamboo sword." The woman in red was actually very reluctant. She still clearly remembered that 160,000 years ago, she was still a weak, small, and mindless plant demon. Timid, cowardly, lonely, and helpless. She for many years. On a night, when the rain and the rain, the sky down, down, and down, and down, the XT, snow, the thing would happen. Just like that, many years passed. On a stormy night, what she was most worried about still happened. A Lin, the mountain, had the mountain, the Lin, the have, had to say many, She didn't even have the time to dodge before the python demon targeted her. Up until now, she could still remember how despaired, frustrated, and helpless she felt at that moment. It was like the shadow of death had enveloped her. There was great terror between life and death. At that time, she swore that if anyone was able to save her this time, then she would use her life to repay that person's kindness, and she would never regret it. The python demon seemed to have heard the voice in her heart. Or perhaps it was because the python demon's aura was too arrogant and ferocious. It drew the attention of a cultivator that passed by. It was a man in a scholar's robe with wide sleeves, a high hat, and a wide belt. He held a book in his hand, and he seemed like a scholar as he walked over amidst the pouring rain and surging lightning. His bearing was upright and unrestrained, and his gaze was warm and clear. At that instant, she suddenly felt that all the despair, helplessness, and frustration in her heart had vanished. It was like she'd seen a wisp of sunlight that tore through the pouring rain and illuminated the eternal night, and it brought along indescribable warmth and light. After that, the python demon was pinched in his hand, and then he shook his head and said with a smile, How can you step onto the righteous path of a demon cultivator with a ferocious nature? I advise you to keep a little bit of intelligence in your heart so that you'll have a chance to attain the Tao. The python demon transformed into human form and knelt down and kowtowed 3 times, and it seemed to be expressing the kindness of being enlightened, and then it vanished beneath the veil of the night. The young man squatted down and looked at her with a gentle gaze as he said, "You're truly pitiable, little flower. What's rare is that even though you don't have intelligence, you have a heart towards the Tao. Never mind, since I've seen you, then I'll open your intelligence and pass down the Tao to you, so that you won't have to be afraid in the future." That voice was like a flowing stream that seeped into her heart, and it was something that she was unable to forget for her entire lifetime. Up until now, she still firmly believed that it was the warmest voice she'd ever heard in her entire lifetime. After that, the young man left. Before he left, he withdrew a piece of ordinary bamboo, cut it into a sword, and inscribed the words Snow's Lament on it. This bamboo sword, Snow's Lament, had become the thing that the red-clothed woman cared about the most in the boundless years of the past, and she treasured it like a part of her heart. Later on, she found out that the warm, upright, and unrestrained young man in scholar's robe was the 19th disciple of Mount Heart, Shueya. Staring at the red-clothed woman for a moment, Lin Sun didn't refuse in the end. He took the bamboo sword, looked at it for a moment, and said, "I can't guarantee whether I can see the 19th senior fellow apprentice in the future, but as long as I see him, I will definitely hand this thing over to him." The red-clothed woman said excitedly, "That's good, that's good." Today, she was already a peak existence under the Emperor realm. Her foundation and strength were strong enough to make all living beings in the world tremble. But at this time, she was as excited and joyful as a young girl. "My little friend, my name is Lingyu. I will definitely repay your kindness in the future." The red-clothed woman took a deep breath, restrained her inner excitement, and said seriously. Lin Sun said, "I don't ask you to repay me. I just hope that you won't cause any trouble during the period of time you stay in the Great Wall of the Imperial Pass." The red-clothed woman named Lingyu nodded without hesitation. On this day, Mr. Shin saw Lin Sun off. Before leaving, he couldn't help asking, "My little friend, what's your plan after going back?" Lin Sun's heart moved, and he said, "Senior, do you think I will encounter any danger when I go to Sunset Tang Valley with my current strength?" He planned to rescue the spirit of the insignificant Bao. However, Sunset Tang Valley was the nest of Golden Crow, so Lin Sun didn't dare to despise it. Mr. Shin's expression was complicated. He probably guessed that Lin Sun's trip was destined to have nothing to do with visiting, and it was very likely to be for revenge. After thinking for a bit, Mr. Shun said, "The Golden Crow Bloodline's half-Emperor Realm experts are also currently serving in Imperial Pass Great Wall. However, according to my speculations, setting Suntang Valley definitely has a Saint King overseeing it. With your current strength, unless you step into the peak of the Great Sage Realm, you might not have to fear the Golden Crow Bloodline." Lin Sun's black eyes flickered, and he nodded. "My little friend, although Golden Crow is notorious, it is also a force that can't be ignored in the ancient Desolation territory. There have been several emperors from this clan, and now they're all cultivating on the Starry Sky ancient path. If you fight against them," before Mr. Shin finished, Lin Sun said with a smile, "Senior, don't worry. I'm just going to rescue a friend suppressed in Sunset Tang Valley." Mr. Shun sighed inwardly. How could he not know that with the fierceness and insolence of Golden Crow, how could they obediently hand over Lin Sun's friend? However, he couldn't persuade Lin Sun on this matter. Before long, a teleportation formation was opened in Yang Pass. Not only Mr. Shun came to see Lin Sun off, but also Shun Ji, Madame Mu, Ling Xiaozi, and other old monsters. The woman in red, Ling Yu, was also there. "Seniors, farewell." Lin Sun stood in the formation and bowed. "Boy, take care. If you have a chance in the future, come and see us more often. My little friend, let's play chess again next time we meet." Shun Ji, Madame Mu, Ling Xiaozi, and the others all spoke with a smile. Buzz, with a strange fluctuation, Lin Sun's figure suddenly disappeared from the formation. For a moment, everyone's mood fluctuated. Lin Sun had only arrived at the Great Wall of the Imperial Pass for less than 3 months, but he had brought them too many surprises and shocks. Everyone knew that such a young man, as long as he didn't encounter any mishaps, his future achievements on the road of Tao were destined to be above theirs. Don't worry about not knowing friends on the road ahead. Who in the world doesn't know you? Mr. Shun said slowly with his hands behind his back. On this day, Lin Sun, whose name had long shaken the Great Wall of the Imperial Pass, set foot on the journey back to the ancient Desolation region. There were even some who secretly rejoiced, as if they had sent away a god of plague, because ever since Lin Sun arrived at the Great Wall of the Imperial Pass, there had been too much bloodshed and turmoil. Old Taoist Qiu and other quasi-emperors were killed, and even Gu Yangtu was suppressed for 10,000 years. All of this was too terrifying. Yet now, this junior that was like a god of plague had finally left, and actually caused many old fellows to feel as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. It was as if they let Lin Sun stay any longer, he would definitely stir up a great disaster. Ancient Desolation region, Divine Secret Pavilion. Buzz, with a strange fluctuation, Lin Sun's figure appeared on an altar in a secret realm of the Divine Secret Pavilion. Lin Sun immediately saw Elder Een, who was wearing a straw raincoat and a bamboo hat, sitting cross-legged in the distance with his eyes closed. "Greetings, Senior." Lin Sun walked down the altar and said respectfully. This trip to the Great Wall of the Imperial Pass allowed him to witness the glory of many quasi-emperors. With such a comparison, he became more and more aware of how unfathomable this Elder Yin's cultivation was. He was definitely an extraordinary existence. Elder Een didn't make a sound, his expression dull like a clay statue, without the slightest reaction. Lin Sun didn't find this strange. He didn't say anything else, turning around and walking into the distance. When his figure disappeared, Elder Een, who had been sitting with his eyes closed, sighed inwardly. This child's path is full of killing and tribulations. I wonder how much more tempering he will have to go through in the future before he can rise to become an emperor, stepping on a path that has never been seen since ancient times. Chapter 1690. Divine Secret Pavilion. When Miao Xian first saw Lin Sun, he couldn't help but be slightly stunned. After 3 months, Lin Sun seemed to have completely transformed into a different person, and he had a unique charm that was unique among his peers. Majestic like a mountain, vast like the sea, great and lofty, boundless and immeasurable. Could it be that this kid had already broken through and become an absolute great saint? Miao Xian quickly discovered that Lin Sun hadn't broken through, but there was a charm that belonged to great around him. Especially when he tried to sense it carefully, he found that all the scenes he saw before had disappeared. Lin Sun was still the same Lin Sun, like an unpolished jade, and the charm contained within him was natural. If other cultivators saw this, they would definitely think that Lin Sun was just an ordinary person. Divine objects conceal themselves, and so do people. When they're peerless to the extreme, they're invisible like elephants, and no one can detect them. Miao Xian praised in his heart. Lin Sun didn't stay in the Divine Secret Pavilion, and after a brief conversation with Miao Xian, he intended to leave immediately. 3 months ago, when he intended to head to the Great Wall of the Imperial Pass, he met Ao, Jintian, and Yin Huan, the 2 geniuses from the ancient path of the starry sky. Ao Jintian was Zhao Jingshuan's cousin, and he came to the ancient desolation to take Zhao Jingxian to the true dragon bloodline to participate in the 10,000 Dragons immortal meeting. However, Lin Sun didn't agree at that time, and he said that he would decide on this matter after he returned from the front line. After talking with Miao Xian just now, Lin Sun found out that Ao Jintian and Yin Huan had left the Divine Secret Pavilion 2 months ago and headed to the Star Chest Sea. This made Lin Sun a little worried. If Ao Jintian acted rashly and took Zhao Jingxian away by force, then it would be bad. So Lin Sun didn't dare to stay at all. Star Chest Sea. Islands and reefs were scattered all over the vast sea, and they were covered in mist as if they were shrouded in a mysterious veil. On one of the islands and reefs. I'm not bragging, but on the ancient path of the starry sky, who dares to not give me, oh, Jintian face? Even the descendants of the 10 great combat clans and the heirs of the 6 great Dao courts, even if their combat strength is stronger than mine and their seniority is higher than mine, they don't dare to slight me. A.O. Jintian's eyes were drowsy and his face was flushed red as he sat there bragging. Boast, you can boast all you want. Since you're so powerful, why haven't you entered the starry sky, true sageboard yet? The old toad sneered. It didn't believe him at all. Never would I have imagined that not only are the toads fond of blowing their own trumpets, even you people from the true dragon bloodline are fond of boasting. Ha ha! Alu's laughter was wild and unrestrained. There were over 10 jars of wine nearby the 3 of them, and all of them were fine wine that A.O. Jintian had brought over and belonged to the true dragon bloodline. It was called the Fallen Immortal. Ignorant, A.O. Jintian said disdainfully, you two have been hanging around in a small place like the ancient desolation realm. How would you know the vastness of the starry sky, ancient road? When are you going to ask around on the starry sky, ancient path to see if I, A.O. Jintian, am lying or not? In the distance, Yin Huan and Zhao Jingxian were drinking tea. Yin Huan couldn't help but feel slightly helpless when she witnessed all of this. Everything about that cousin of yours is good, but he loves drinking too much. Once he drinks, he gets carried away and blabbers without thinking. This was already the 9th round of drinking that A.O. Jintian had drunk since she and A.O. Jintian arrived at the Star Chest Sea, and he would drink for an entire day and night every single time. Yin Huan couldn't help but feel a slight headache because no woman liked to see her man drink like his life depended on it. Zhao Jingxian smiled and didn't comment. 2 months ago, when A.O. Jintian and Yin Huan arrived, they made their intentions clear, and it allowed Zhao Jingxian to finally meet A.O. Jintian, this cousin that she'd never met before. A.O. Jintian was very cordial. As the 7th prince of the true dragon bloodline, he didn't put on an overbearing attitude. From A.O. Jintian, Zhao Jingxian found out for the first time that her mother was actually a direct descendant of the true dragon bloodline, and the current patriarch of the true dragon bloodline was her mother's older brother. At the same time, Zhao Jingxian understood the specific details of the 10,000 dragons' immortal meeting. In the end, she confirmed that A.O. Jintian had indeed come with good intentions. The 2 of you really don't intend to head to the ancient starry sky path with me? This is an opportunity that's hard to come by in 1,000 years. You must know that if you want to head to the ancient starry sky path from the ancient desolation region, then you can only wait until you become emperors before you have the ability to head there. A.O. Jintian was obviously drunk, and he spoke arrogantly. But so long as the 2 of you are willing, I guarantee that I can take the 2 of you with me when I leave with cousin sister. With the resources and natural talent you possess, even if you go to the ancient starry sky path, you won't be buried. Moreover, with me, A.O. Jintian, protecting you, who would dare bully the 2 of you? Old Toad smacked his lips as he drank and said, ha, not to mention us. Even if you want to take Miss Jingxian away without my big brother's approval, don't even think about it. Right, no way. Alu nodded. A.O. Jintian was furious. I'm taking cousin sister to participate in the 10,000 dragons immortal meeting, and I'm not trying to harm her. Why do the 2 of you look like you're guarding against a thief? Old Toad and Alu spoke in unison. Because Miss Jingxian is my big brother's woman now. Alas, A.O. Jintian heaved a long sigh. You don't understand. The blood of the true dragon flows in her body. If cousin sister wants to get married, it won't be so easy. Just like how I, the 7th prince of my clan, have such an important status. But if I want to marry Miss Yin Huan, I must get the consent of the elders in my clan. Alas, you won't understand. Yin Huan frowned and couldn't help sighing faintly. She said softly to Zhao Jingxian, Sister, if you and Lin Sun really like each other, I will definitely persuade Child A.O. to help you more. Perhaps because Zhao Jingxian and Lin Sun's situation was similar to hers and A.O. Jintian's, she couldn't help feeling sympathetic. Zhao Jingxian nodded with a smile. She didn't have so many worries, because even if countless people opposed it, she would be with Lin Sun at all costs. Come on, let's drink. Let's get drunk today. Ao Jintian shouted to compete in drinking again. When Lin Sun returned, he saw such a scene and couldn't help being stunned. Originally, he was worried that something unexpected would happen to Ao Jintian and Yin Huan. Who would have thought that it would be such a scene? It's okay, it's okay. Lin Sun relaxed all over. Big brother. Alu and Old Toad found Lin Sun at the first time. They directly left Ao Jintian and went to greet him. At the same time, Zhao Jingxian also got up, and her beautiful face was full of dazzling brilliance. Seeing this scene, Yin Huan finally confirmed that Ao Jintian's cousin was obviously dead set on Lin Sun. If he wanted to take Zhao Jingxian away this time, he really had to pass Lin Sun first. You're back at last. Ao Jintian got up with a trace of displeasure on his face. This guy who wanted to be his cousin's husband actually made him wait for 2 months. You seem to be very dissatisfied. Lin Sun came over. When he thought that such an arrogant guy was very likely to be his brother-in-law in the future, he was a little speechless in his heart. Of course I'm dissatisfied. If it weren't for you, I would have left with my cousin. Ao Jintian became more and more displeased. As his cousin's husband, couldn't this guy respect him a little? Lin Sun said with a fake smile, "You're very dissatisfied, and I'm also very unhappy. How about we have a fight to vent our anger?" Okay. Ao Jintian agreed without hesitation. Last time in the Divine Secret Pavilion, he was suppressed by Lin Sun, and he was quite dissatisfied in his heart. He regarded it as a shame. Every time he thought of it, he felt ashamed and was worried about not having a chance to fight with Lin Sun again. Seeing this, Yin Huan and Zhao Jingxian hurriedly came to dissuade them. The brother-in-law and his cousin-in-law didn't like each other. As soon as they met, they were like needles to an awl, which was an eye-opener for Old Toad and Alu. It's okay. I won't be cruel. I just want to fight with the 7th prince again. Lin Sun said with a smile. Yes, you stand aside and don't disturb us. This is a matter between men. You don't understand. Ao Jintian said in a deep voice. Boom! Before his voice died away, he had already soared into the sky and rushed to the top of the clouds. He looked disdainful like a real dragon. Lin Sun, come up and fight. Last time in the Divine Secret Pavilion, I didn't teach you a good lesson for the sake of Miao Xuan. Now you asked for it. Lin Sun moved in the air and appeared on the top of the clouds in an instant. Boom! There was no suspense at all. The battle broke out. In the sky, the roar of the dragon and the roar of Taoist light burst the void. The clouds collapsed, and the world was shaking. As soon as Ao Jintian started, he used all his strength without reservation. He knew very well how powerful Lin Sun was. The lesson of the last fiasco was still vivid in his mind, so he wouldn't underestimate Lin Sun at all. But this time, Lin Sun didn't hold back either. He wanted to teach this arrogant guy a good lesson. Otherwise, if Lin Sun really became his brother-in-law, he wouldn't dare to put on airs in front of him again. Boom! Soon, Ao Jintian was beaten by Lin Sun until he couldn't even raise his head. He was ravaged like a live target. Old Toad, Alu, Zhao Jingxian, and Yin Huan were all dumbfounded. Lin Sun didn't hit hard, but he hit Ao Jintian so hard that his nose was swollen and his hair was disheveled. No matter how Ao Jintian roared, it didn't help. It's just a skin wound. Don't be angry, sister. Zhao Jingxian comforted her gently. Yin Huan smiled reluctantly and said, It's good to teach him a lesson so that he won't look down on the heroes of the world in the future. But your man's combat power is really terrible. Even on the Starry Sky Ancient Path, he can easily enter the ranks of the Starry Sky True Sage list. Zhao Jingxian smiled without saying anything. Alu, do you think Big Brother has completely offended his brother-in-law? Old Toad was a little worried. Alu analyzed. Not to the extent of offending him. Big Brother must have done this to teach his brother-in-law a lesson, so that he won't dare to neglect Miss Jingxian. Bang! Suddenly, Ao Jintian's figure fell from the sky and hit the reef hard, making a human-shaped hole in the rocky ground. Then, Ao Jintian's resentful voice came out of the hole. Boy, is this how you treat your brother-in-law? Chapter 1692. Brother-in-law. Hearing this title, Lin Sun, who had just landed from the sky and was about to stop, couldn't help but pull out Ao Jintian again and beat him hard on the ground. The seventh prince of the true dragon bloodline was completely beaten up. His body convulsed as if he was having an epileptic fit. Inhuan couldn't bear to watch it anymore. She turned her head and complained in her heart. No matter how strong Lin Sun was, he couldn't change the fact that Ao Jintian would be his brother-in-law in the future. Big Brother is getting more and more powerful. Old Toad sighed with emotion. After 3 months, Lin Sun's combat power and temperament showed a new transformation, which was really amazing. Alu laughed and said, in my opinion, it would be great if Ao Jintian could change his habit of bragging after this lesson. After half an hour, everyone sat on the ground. Ao Jintian's bruised nose and swollen face had recovered, but when he looked at Lin Sun, there was still a trace of bitterness in his eyes. It was too cruel. This guy didn't give face to his brother-in-law at all. How could he raise his head in the future? But he only dared to complain in his heart. Ao Jintian decided to avoid meeting his cousin-in-law as much as possible in the future, lest Lin Sun should fight with him when he was in a bad mood. Child Lin, what's your decision? Inhuan's words made everyone look at Lin Sun with a serious expression. Everyone knew that Lin Sun's decision would determine Zhao Jingshuan's fate. Even Ao Jintian couldn't help being nervous at this moment. If Lin Sun didn't agree, it was impossible for him to take Zhao Jingxian away with his strength. What do you think, Jingxian? Lin Sun looked at Zhao Jingxian. Zhao Jingxian smiled and said, it's up to you. I'll listen to you. Lin Sun was silent. After a long time, he took a deep breath and said with a smile, let's go. As early as when the Divine Secret Pavilion received Zhao Jingshuan's letter, he knew that Zhao Jingxian was actually very interested in the meeting. However, she cared more about his attitude, so she let him make the decision. Under such circumstances, how could he possibly refuse? Not to mention he'd already discerned that even though Ao Jintian was slightly arrogant and haughty, Ao Jintian really did carry goodwill towards Zhao Jingxian. No matter what, the two of them were cousins with the closest bloodline, and blood was thicker than water. Ao Jintian's eyes lit up, and he said in excitement, that's for the best. During the Myriad Dragons Immortal Gathering, Cousin Jingxian will definitely shine brightly and obtain many unexpected great fortunes. Inhuan heaved a long sigh of relief, as well while extraordinary splendor suffused her eyes. She even felt slightly envious of Zhao Jingxian because she was able to find such an understanding and considerate Dao companion. What more could she ask for? Are you really willing? Zhao Jingxian was obviously very surprised, and her beautiful and clear eyes opened wide. She seemed to be complaining yet happy at the same time. Lin Sun smiled. As long as you want it, just do it. Although I'm reluctant, I still hope you can do what you want to do. Didn't you say that if two lovers love each other for a long time, they won't stay together day and night? Old Toad sighed. The air is filled with a sour stench. I can't take it anymore. With that, he got up and left. Alu sighed with emotion. Look, Big Brother, Old Toad is jealous. I've long known that there's something wrong with this Toad. He has never liked women. It turns out that he's worried about you, Big Brother. Before he finished, Lin Sun felt a chill all over his body and said angrily, don't disgust me. You should also disappear quickly. Alu hurriedly left to appease Old Toad, saying things like it's not wrong to like men, it's wrong to not fight for it. But it was foreseeable that with Old Toad's temper, he would definitely attack him immediately. Sure enough, it didn't take long for Old Toad's angry scream to be heard in the distance. You barbarian! Now you're so F***king perverted. You're the F***king rabbit. You F***king like men. Ao Jintian couldn't help laughing. Interesting, these two guys are so much to my liking. If they return to the Starry Sky Ancient Road with me, I'll definitely invite them to visit the true dragon bloodline. Inhuan said coldly, you also like men? Ao Jintian shivered all over. Well, forget it. I don't have the fortune to enjoy it. Both Lin Sun and Zhao Jingxian couldn't help smiling. After making a decision, they got together that night, drinking and talking happily. Ao Jintian and Inhuan talked about some things on the Starry Sky Ancient Road, which made Lin Sun fascinated. For example, on the Starry Sky Ancient Road, there were 10 war clans, each of which had a very glorious history of conquest and a long history. There were 6 Tao courts, which controlled many realms. There were realm war alliances, each of which was composed of many Emperor realm cultivators, and their power could not be underestimated. For example, Ancient Wasteland War Alliance was composed of Emperor realm cultivators from the ancient Desolation territory. For example, the other 8 territories formed their respective war alliances. In this regard, Lin Sun had heard from a young man with Golden Cicada that when each Emperor realm cultivator joined Ancient Wasteland War Alliance, he could bring 3 to 5 followers of Quasi-Emperor realm. Nominally, they were followers, but in fact, if they could join Ancient Wasteland War Alliance and cultivate with Emperor realm cultivators, it would be relatively easier for them to pass the tribulation and become Emperor realm cultivators in the future. In addition to these, there were countless starry territories, colorful worlds, and vast continents on the Starry Sky Ancient Road. That night, Lin Sun drank a lot of wine. He knew that Jing Xian was about to leave, and he might not have a chance to see her for a long time. At this moment, no matter how open-minded Lin Sun was, he could not help but feel reluctant. Zhao Jingxian silently accompanied Lin Sun and drank with him. In fact, her heart was full of emotions, and she was experiencing all kinds of feelings. By the way, will you still have a chance to enter the Kunlun ruins when you go to the 10,000 Dragons Immortal meeting? Lin Sun suddenly asked. Zhao Jingxian was stunned. After returning from the 9 territories battlefield, Lin Sun had already prepared a flying immortal token for her, Old Toad, Alu, Little Silver, and Little Tian, which meant that they were already qualified to enter the Kunlun ruins. You want to go to the Kunlun ruins? That's one of the 4 great ruins of Tao. On the Starry Sky Ancient Road, even the descendants of the top forces are qualified to go to the Kunlun ruins, Ao Jintian said in surprise. As far as I know, one has to at least have the foundation of a peerless great saint in order to have the foundation to search for opportunities there. In the end, less than 1/10 of them can walk out of the Kunlun ruins safely. Inhuan also said, when I came to the ancient Desolation realm, I also heard that the ancient path of stars to the Kunlun ruins is about to reappear in recent years. Many peerless figures on the Starry Sky Great Saint list are already preparing for it. At this point, she looked at Lin Sun and reminded him kindly, Brother Lin, with your current cultivation and realm, you might be able to easily rank on the Starry Sky True Sage list. However, if you go to the Kunlun ruins, I'm afraid you won't be able to compete with those ruthless people on the Starry Sky Great Saint list. The Starry Sky True Sage list and the Starry Sky Great Saint list. The difference of one word represented a world of difference. They were on completely different levels. For example, Ao Jintian was already a peerless true sage who had created his own method, but he had yet to be ranked on the Starry Sky True Sage list. From this, it could be imagined how harsh and abnormal the ranking of the Starry Sky True Sage list was. Those who could be ranked on it must be peerless figures who could dominate a region. In contrast, the figures on the Starry Sky Great Saint list were definitely more terrifying and powerful. Lin Sun frowned and immediately calmed down. It wasn't easy for him to get a chance to enter the Kunlun ruins, so it was impossible for him to be scared off by a few words. Moreover, he only needed an opportunity to break through to the peerless Great Saint realm, so he was not afraid to compete with others. The Kunlun ruins is regarded as the dragon burial ground by my true dragon bloodline. It's a place of great danger. Especially the descendants of my true dragon bloodline will suffer unimaginably terrible disasters when they enter it. Taking a deep breath, Ao Jintian said in a deep voice, Therefore, a long time ago, my ancestors set a rule that no descendant of my true dragon bloodline is allowed to enter the Kunlun ruins. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and looked at this guy suspiciously. Ao Jintian immediately said angrily, Do you think I'm lying? I'm worried that my cousin won't go back with me and will go to the Kunlun ruins with you. That's gauging the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. I'm not afraid to tell you that my third brother went to the Kunlun ruins without permission a long time ago. In the end, it's been more than 38,000 years, and he still hasn't come out of the Kunlun ruins. The third prince of the true dragon bloodline, Ao Yi. Inhuan was moved. A long time ago, this third prince, Ao Yi, was ranked third on the Starry Sky Great Saint list. Until now, many old people on the Starry Sky ancient path felt it was a pity. If third Prince Ao Yi could return from the Kunlun ruins alive, he would at least be a half-step Emperor realm existence with the hope of becoming an emperor. Lin Sun's expression flickered. After a while, he sighed, Jingxian, instead of doing this, why don't you go to the ancestral land of the true dragon bloodline with this guy? Zhao, Jingxian nodded. She knew that Lin Sun was completely thinking about her safety. Ao Jintian was unhappy. Kid, what do you mean by this guy? Will it kill you to call me brother-in-law? Lin Sun glanced at this guy, who looked uncertain for a while. In the end, he became listless and didn't dare to express his dissatisfaction. This was the fierce prestige that Lin Sun had established after beating Ao Jintian, his brother-in-law. The effects seemed to be very good so far. One day later, Ao Jintian and Inhuan were going to leave today. Of course, Zhao Jingxian would also go with them. My two brothers, are you really not going to consider going with me? That's the Starry Sky ancient path, the upper world that countless practitioners dream of going to. If we miss this opportunity, it will be difficult for us to meet again in the future. Before leaving, Ao Jintian kindly invited Old Toad and Ah Lu to go with him, but they refused without hesitation. This made Ao Jintian sigh. At this moment, Lin Sun, who had been silent, suddenly looked at Ao Jintian and said seriously, if anything happens to Jingxian on this trip to the true dragon bloodline, I, Lin Sun, will not spare you. Chapter 1694. Hearing Lin Sun's undisguised threat, Ao Jintian's eyebrows trembled and he said angrily, Jingxian is my cousin. How can I let her have an accident? Lin Sun nodded and said, why don't we have another round of practice before we leave? Ao Jintian's face turned stiff and red. If this guy really became his cousin's husband in the future, it would be a disaster. Lin Sun stepped forward, patted him on the shoulder, and said, I believe you, but it's hard for me to believe the whole bloodline of true dragons. Really, if something happens to Jingxian, I won't be able to bear it. At that time, I won't care about the bloodline of true dragons. Speaking of this, he sighed softly. Although it's a little harsh, it's all from the bottom of my heart. I heard that dragons have reverse scales, and those who touch it will die. Jingxian is my reverse scale. As soon as he finished speaking, he smiled and paid no attention to Ao Jintian, who had an indeterminate expression as he turned around and walked towards Zhao Jingxian. You bullied him too much. Zhao Jingxian saw the scene just now and was moved. Her beautiful eyes were as tender as water. I'm worried about you, Lin Sun said with a smile. He took out a storage bracelet and handed it to Zhao Jingxian. Take it. There are some treasures and elixirs in it. Take care of yourself when you go to the bloodline of true dragons. If someone bullies you, keep in mind first. I'll help you settle accounts later. Also, remember to practice hard. Don't worry about me. Even God dares not accept people like me. You know it best in these years from Xiao Empire to now. At this moment, Lin Sun nagged like an old woman, exhorting, and tirelessly telling. There was nothing more to say. Zhao Jingxian listened with a smile. When she left and soared into the sky with Ao Jintian and Inhuan, Zhao Jingxuan's pretty and clear face still had a smile on it. However, 2 streams of tears had flowed down. There was no way to eliminate this feeling. She just frowned, but her heart was filled with sadness. She couldn't help looking back and saw Lin Sun waving his hand with a smile on his lips and his eyes full of encouragement and warmth. Until the figures of Zhao Jingxian, Ao Jintian, and Inhuan disappeared. Lin Sun still stood on the cliff of the island and stared blankly. After this parting, it should be a good time and beautiful scenery in name only. Even if there were 1,000 kinds of amorous feelings, who would he tell? Lin Sun suddenly wanted a drink. At the edge of the precipitous cliff, the waves lapped against the shore. Lin Sun sat there casually, holding a green wine gourd, drinking and watching the sea. This was already the 9th day since Zhao Jingxian left. He had been like this for the past 9 days. Is Big Brother trapped by love? In the distance, Lu said worriedly. Ever since Miss Jingxian left, he seemed to have lost his soul. This situation is very bad. It's not to the extent of being trapped by love, but it's true that he's very melancholy in his heart. Old Toad analyzed seriously. Sigh. The love between a man and a woman is really harmful. Lu sighed. He glanced at Old Toad and reminded him, of course, it's the same for men. Don't get caught up in it. The veins on Old Toad's forehead bulged and it shot to its feet, its eyes spitting fire. Barbarian, say that again if you have the guts. His voice was squeezed out through gritted teeth. Lu grinned and said, as your brother, can't I show you some concern? Rabbits don't eat the grass near their burrows. Don't do anything to your brother. Boom! Old Toad directly went berserk and punched Lu in the head. Soon after, the two of them began to fight, slaughtering their way into the 9 heavens, the battle intense. Lin Sun was speechless. These two were really a pair of quarrelsome lovers. He was no longer in the mood to drink. Standing up, he said, when the big blackbird, little Silver, and little Tian come back, tell them not to run around. When I come out of seclusion, I'll go to Sunset Tang Valley. Big Brother, are you going to seclusion? In the sky, Old Toad was surprised. Bang! In a moment of inattention, he was directly punched in the face by Lu. Seeing stars, he immediately flew into a rage and rushed up again. Ha ha ha! Big Brother, go ahead and do your seclusion. As long as I'm here, I won't let. Before Lu's laughter died away, he was kicked away by Old Toad and let out a scream of pain. Lin Sun shook his head and walked down the cliff with his hands clasped behind his back, too lazy to pay attention to these two guys who had nothing better to do. In the wooden house, Lin Sun took a deep breath, and a touch of determination flashed through his black eyes. As early as when he was at the Great Wall of the Imperial Pass, he had already comprehended the essence of greatness. He only needed an opportunity to break through the realm and cast the power of the great sage. But this opportunity didn't come for a long time. However, Lin Sun had long been experienced. Since he started his cultivation, what he pursued was the path of my way is the only one in the world which could be said to be unprecedented and different from a world. Whether it was when he stepped into the king's realm in the domain of death, or when he became a sage at the peak of the 9 regions battlefield, he had experienced similar things. But he wouldn't be helpless because of this. In this seclusion, Lin Sun didn't seek the opportunity to break through the realm, but to do another thing. With a strange wave, Lin Sun suddenly entered the heaven-accessing place again. The familiar green cloud avenue ran through the void as if it was eternal, stretching straight to the end. It was a door to heaven. This door was the real door to heaven, and its height couldn't be seen at a glance. The closed door seemed to be made of gold or iron. It was branded with strange, twisted, obscure, and complicated patterns. Looking at it from a distance, it made people feel small. Lin Sun was familiar with the way. He stepped on the green cloud avenue and came to the door to heaven. I thought you would use up the 3rd chance to ask me for help when you were threatened by the power of the real blood of the Emperor realm. The familiar, empty, and cold voice of the mysterious woman suddenly sounded. She sat cross-legged in front of the door to heaven, and her figure was surrounded by wisps of obscure Taoist light, which made it impossible to see her face clearly. Even if Lin Sun was now a true sage, he couldn't do it. Even with the improvement of his cultivation, when he faced the mysterious woman again this time, he felt more and more deeply a kind of oppression from the heart, which was beyond his control. Greetings, Senior. Lin Sun first saluted, and then said, Gu Yangxiu is not worthy of your help. The mysterious woman opened her eyes. At that moment, Lin Sun was stiff all over, feeling that all his secrets seemed to be exposed. Soon, this uncomfortable feeling disappeared. The mysterious woman said, "If I guess right, you don't plan to use this chance unless there is a disaster in the future, right?" Lin Sun nodded. There was nothing to hide. At that time, he was only a practitioner in the lower 5 realms, which was extremely weak. Now he was at the peak of the true sage realm and was about to break through to the peak of the great sage realm. If it was not necessary, he would rather solve all the problems he encountered by his own strength. Looks like you've really grown up. No matter if it's mental state or experience, you can already be called a true saint. The mysterious woman's voice was cold. "So you are here to push the door this time?" Lin Sun said, "Senior is right. Now, I don't think about the past or the future, but only fight for the present." "Only fight for the present." The mysterious woman was silent for a moment and said, "Do you know the consequences of failure?" Lin Sun nodded calmly. Of course, he knew that if he failed to push the door, he would lose the heaven accessing place completely. Because of this, he didn't make the decision to push the door before. The mysterious woman stood up. Her figure was graceful and hazy like mist, and she was like an ancient green lotus that swayed in the chaos. She came to Lin Sun and looked at the gate to heaven in the distance, saying, "I hope you can do it. I don't want to wait for the next challenger." Lin Sun said with a smile, "I will try my best." After that, he strode forward and went straight to the front of the gate to heaven. He raised his neck and stared at it for a long time. He couldn't help sighing with emotion. It's really worthy of the name of gate to heaven. As he said, he pressed his palm on the cold door with obscure and strange patterns. Buzz, suddenly, Lin Sun only felt that his eyes were blurred and his mind was in a trance, as if he was in another world. The sky was high and the mountains and rivers were picturesque. A majestic figure stood alone on the top of the mountains. He put his hands behind his back and looked at the sky. The mountain wind whistled, blowing his clothes and hair, making him look like an independent man who was about to ride the wind back home. Boom! Suddenly, the figure moved. With a wave of his big sleeve, the divine lights all over the sky transformed into a dazzling beam of light that shot into the sky, broke the sky fiercely, and collided with the vast void outside the universe. Dong, the space in the universe was originally completely empty, yet along with this beam of light colliding with it, it actually forcefully split open a door that seemed like a vortex. The vortex was like a great abyss that swallowed the starry sky. It was deep and terrifying, and it rotated madly. The terrifying force it released tore the surrounding void to the point of distorting and collapsing, and it was extremely terrifying. One could clearly see countless stars being drawn over, as if all the stars were worshipping them. As the vortex spun and whistled, it emitted rumbling sounds, and a shocking scene played out in the void above the green sky. With a single strike, it broke the sky, shook the universe, and opened the gate to nothingness. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, who would dare to believe that someone in the world could produce such monstrous power with just a wave of the sleeve? Lin Sun was shocked. This was the second time he had seen such a terrifying scene. The first time was when he entered Feiyun village for the first time and opened the heaven accessing place for the first time. However, at that time, he was just a thin boy who had just escaped from the mind prison. Now, he was already a peerless true sage. Boom! Before Lin Sun came back to his senses, he only heard a loud noise in his ears, which shook his whole body, made his mind tremble, and made him almost cough up blood. Then he saw the familiar scenes from all those years ago. In the depths of the vortex-like door that was opened outside the universe, a huge beast claw suddenly stretched out, tore the void, and plunged down from the sky. The beast claw was so huge that the mountains in the world were like inconspicuous gravel in front of it. The claw was covered with cold scales, releasing fierce and majestic power. "The gate of stars has been opened by me. Who in this world can stop me from setting foot on the eternal star road? Get out!" With a cold snort, the majestic figure standing proudly on the top of the mountains flicked his finger gently, and a flash of light suddenly appeared. After that, the terrifyingly huge beast claw had already vanished in a thin air. Only a torrent of blood could be seen pouring down, pouring over the earth, dark red and horrifying. But it was not over yet. It wasn't long before a mighty figure that emanated brilliant golden light suddenly charged out from within the star door that was opened up in the universe. The figure was so dazzling, like the scorching sun, which seemed to be burning and could illuminate the world, appearing extremely sacred and immeasurable. Immortal General of the Star Road? Ha ha ha! In order to stop me from seeking Tao, you even sent an immortal general. What a great deal! On the top of the mountains, the majestic figure let out a long roar, heroic and unruly, with a kind of disdainful spirit that looked down on all the heroes in the world. Even though Lin Sun had been prepared for it, he was still shocked by the sound. His blood and qi were in disorder, and his body couldn't help but tremble violently. Although he tried his best to hold back, his mind was already in chaos, buzzing, and he couldn't see anything. Chapter 1696. Later, a doomsday scene appeared, which was still so familiar. The sky had fallen, and the fire of destruction came like a tide, making the world fall into the furnace of chaos, full of devastation and misery. Landslides, tsunamis, plants turned into ashes. All spirits perished. It seemed that doomsday really came. Only on the top of that mountain, a majestic figure stood alone, looking at all this silently with his hands clasped behind his back, with a sense of desolation and loneliness. After a long time, a long sigh resounded through the world. Time is not with me. At this moment, Lin Sun seemed to be infected with complex emotions of despair, frustration, unwillingness, and disappointment. At this moment, there was a bronze coffin next to the majestic figure. It was about 30 meters long, and its surface was engraved with countless dense and mysterious patterns. The majestic figure stepped forward, opened the bronze coffin, took out a scroll and a pen, and threw them into the bronze coffin. Then he carried the whole bronze coffin on his shoulder and strode away. Lin Sun was not surprised at all, because he had seen all this as early as in the past. The scroll and the pen that the majestic figure took out were the treasures left by Master Lu to him. It was with this scroll and the pen that he triggered a wonderful opportunity by chance, and then obtained the heaven-accessing place. However, the second time he saw such a scene was when he pushed the door, which inevitably surprised Lin Sun a little. The most incredible thing was that he had just set foot on the path of cultivation at that time, so he couldn't see how high the cultivation of the majestic figure was. Now, he was a Jushio true saint, and his state of mind was no longer the same as before. But when he saw these familiar scenes, he still felt a sense of awe and depression. Who was the majestic figure, or the so-called Gate of Stars and Eternal Star Path? Suddenly, Lin Sun calmed down. The familiar scenes in front of him hadn't ended yet. What came next was the most important thing. If all these familiar scenes didn't change, then the majestic figure would turn back. Whoosh! When Lin Sun just had this idea, the majestic figure who was striding away seemed to notice something. He suddenly stopped and turned back. It was merely a glance, yet that gaze seemed to have traversed the boundless space and time to shoot over from afar. At this moment, Lin, who had prepared for everything and tried his best to keep calm, still felt like being struck by lightning. A rumbling sound rang out from the depths of his soul. The scenes he had just seen shattered like glass and began to be annihilated. At the same time, Lin Sun couldn't help coughing up a mouthful of blood. His entire body shook violently, feeling as if his soul was being torn apart inch by inch. There was an indescribable pain. That feeling was so intense that it felt like he would die in the next moment. A single gaze had caused him to faint the first time he looked at him all those years ago. Now, he was actually going to repeat the scene from all those years ago. No, the scene that was about to unfold was destined to be extraordinary. Last time, because he was too weak, he did not get to witness it. How could he allow the same mistake to happen again? Boom! At this moment, Lin Sun completely broke out. He ran his cultivation to an unprecedented extreme, and his whole body seemed to be burning. Finally, in the various scenes that were suddenly annihilated, Lin Sun once again saw that pair of eyes looking at him from afar. In those eyes, there seemed to be a hint of surprise and a hint of relief. Suddenly, they brightened. They were as bright as two big suns. But for Lin Sun, when he met that gaze, his soul felt the sharp pain of being smelted and incinerated, and his consciousness became blurred. No, there must be more. Lin Sun clenched his teeth, and his expression was almost ferocious. Deep in his heart, he had a strong intuition that the next scene must be related to opening the gate to heaven. How could he give up? What Lin Sun felt, the mysterious woman couldn't feel at all. She only saw that Lin Sun's expression was changing sharply, from the initial surprise to shock, and then to astonishment, as if he had discovered something. But soon, his expression was filled with pain and ferociousness. The blue veins on his forehead bulged, and the breath of his whole body was as turbulent as the sea. Could it be that even he can't? The mysterious woman frowned. For her, time was like an endless river that kept flowing without an end. In these long years, she couldn't remember how many people had entered the heaven-accessing place. Each of them had a peerless style that was unprecedented. Each of them had great luck, and each of them could be said to be the king of the world. But each of them had returned in failure. There was only one talented sword cultivator who managed to push open a crack in the door to heaven. However, it was only a crack. In the end, the genius swordsman named Xian Shanshan only said, "I can't force it." Then he shook his head and left. However, this was all in the primitive times. The mysterious woman once told Lin Sun that Xian Shanshan was a peerless figure, no matter in talent or talent, who was not inferior to Lin Sun. He was also the only challenger who made her feel sorry for him. At that time, she also told Lin Sun to remember the surname Xian, because this surname was too extraordinary, mysterious, and mysterious. The Gate of Wonders was not a surname that could be given by any clan. If Lin Sun also failed to open the door this time, the mysterious woman thought for a long time, and finally came to a conclusion that she would feel more sorry for Xian Shanshan than when she saw him leave last time. Soon, the mysterious woman noticed that something was wrong. Strange Taoist patterns suddenly emerged in her eyes, like a pair of light tearing through the darkness of the eternal night, and she looked at Lin Sun. At this time, an obscure power emerged from Lin Sun, as unfathomable as the abyss of the great void in Lin Sun's consciousness. He finally saw a pair of eyes that were like torches and scorching suns. Almost at the same time, he exerted the forbidden passing without hesitation. For a moment, everything in front of him froze. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun's heart stirred up turbulent waves. In the boundless starry sky, empty and cold, a road paved by countless huge stars led to the end of the starry sky. At the end of the road, there was a door closed in the boundless darkness. Break this door, and you can see eternity. With a bang, a shout resounded in Lin Sun's mind. Then, the road piled up by countless stars burst into pieces, and the closed, mysterious door at the end of the starry sky also disappeared. Everything in front of him was gone. But in Lin Sun's heart, a strange star map symbol emerged, looming and flowing, like a key that could unlock the eternal mystery of the dust-laden ages. In the end, this strange star map symbol also turned into a light rain, merged into Lin Sun's heart, and disappeared completely, as if it had never existed. But Lin Sun was very clear that this star map symbol was in his heart, and one day it would definitely open the mystery of seeing eternity for him. After a long time, Lin Sun calmed down, and his surging mood returned to normal. What he had seen before reappeared in his mind like a glance at flowers on horseback. A majestic figure broke the sky, shook the universe, and opened the gate of stars. When he was about to set foot on the eternal star road, a terrifying, huge beast claw stretched out from the gate of stars. A majestic, golden figure called Immortal General of the Star Road swept out. Then the sky and the earth collapsed, and everything collapsed, as if the end of the world had come. The majestic figure sighed. Time is not with me. Obviously, he failed to set foot on the Eternal Star Road and was dispirited. Carrying a bronze coffin, he was about to leave. But at the moment of leaving, He looked back and left a gaze that seemed to be able to penetrate the eternal time and space. In the gaze, there was a star path paved in the empty starry sky, and at the end of the path was a closed, mysterious door. At this time, when he calmly recalled these scenes, Lin Sun found that he still missed a lot of details. For example, where did the majestic figure finally go with the bronze coffin? The only thing he could be sure of was that the majestic figure was the master who created the heaven accessing place. Or he could be called the Lord of Heaven Accessing Place. That mysterious door that's tightly shut in the boundless darkness should be the door of stars. Breaking through this door will allow one to see eternity. This eternity must be referring to the eternal star road, Lin Sun murmured in his heart. However, what he couldn't figure out was what the star map symbol that appeared in his heart represented. Was this the key left by the Lord of Heaven Accessing Place? If so, when he had the power to break the gate of stars one day, could he set foot on the eternal star road with this key? Lin Sun was lost in thought. The scenes he had witnessed earlier contained too many inconceivable details, and there were many things that were worth pondering and pondering over. But soon, the mysterious woman's voice sounded in his ears. Actually, you don't have to be so discouraged. You're the most unique challenger I've ever seen. Not only did you win every battle in the challenge, but you've also won every battle. Moreover, you were able to pry into the state of creating something out of nothing while still at the eternal life stage, and you've seen through the trap of seeking truth from the heart. Amongst all the challengers in the past, no one has ever been able to attain such a level. In the future, it is not impossible for you to become an emperor with your current foundation and cultivation. Her voice was still cold and empty, but with a trace of disappointment. It seemed that she didn't expect that Lin Sun didn't succeed in the final challenge of opening the door. Lin Sun woke up from his contemplation and couldn't help looking a little strange. Did she think he failed? Well, the gate to heaven was still closed, and he didn't make a sound for a long time. It was no wonder that she misunderstood him. Thinking of this, Lin Sun couldn't help but smile. Senior, look. His right hand, which was pressed on the gate to heaven, gently pushed forward as his voice fell. More updates. If you want to see more updates from Goldfish, please open WeChat, search for the public account, ZiaJinyu233, and add me. Chapter 1698. Under the shocked eyes of the mysterious woman, the towering gate opened slowly. There was a roar in the empty secret realm. It was like an unknown mystery that had been sealed for thousands of years was gently opened. The sound made the mysterious woman's calm state of mind ripple. It was really opened. A dazzling light poured out of the gate and illuminated the whole secret realm. There was a sacred and solemn atmosphere spreading. The mysterious woman was stunned. She had been waiting for a long time and had seen many challengers who failed, but she didn't expect that Lin Sun succeeded. Just now, she thought that Lin Sun had failed to open the gate, so she comforted him, but she didn't expect that Lin Sun would give her a big surprise. What on earth was hidden in the gate? At this moment, Lin Sun and the mysterious woman both held their breath and concentrated, with rare expectations and excitement in their hearts. The sacred light was flowing like a dense mist. As far as the eye could see, there was a vast expanse of whiteness, like a fairyland. Let's go in and have a look. The mysterious woman was obviously more expectant than Lin Sun. She had been waiting for countless years. As the gatekeeper, how could she not be eager to know the secret inside the gate? Whoosh! Uncontrollably, Lin Sun was taken by the mysterious woman and plunged into the vast white world inside the door. This is Chaos Immortal Mist, which contains the supreme power of order. Only the real Emperor Realm practitioners have the power to refine it, and it has a wonderful beneficial effect on the practice of emperors. Your cultivation is too low. You'd better not try to collect this Chaos Immortal Mist. In the white mist, the mysterious woman explained casually. She was obviously in a good mood. Chaos Immortal Mist. Lin Sun remembered this name. What? After 10 minutes, the mysterious woman stopped and showed a surprised look. At the same time, Lin Sun finally saw an ancient cemetery in the mist not far away. Numerous tombs were scattered about like stars in the sky, and there were no less than 1,000 of them. It seemed to be extremely vast. This, Lin Sun couldn't help being stunned. Was there an ancient cemetery behind the gate to heaven? Who dared to believe it? Even the mysterious woman couldn't help falling silent at this moment. Cemetery. Thousands of tombs. Who was buried in each of these tombs? Who was qualified to be buried in the gate to heaven? The mysterious woman strolled into the graveyard and arrived in front of a grave. Lin Sun also followed. In an instant, all the hairs on his body stood on end. As far as the eye could see, it was like walking into a graveyard. Each grave emitted an invisible and terrifying fluctuation. It was as if an ancient god was buried there. Look, the woman pointed in front of a grave. There was a stone table there, and on the stone table was a finger that had dried up a long time ago. After experiencing the passage of countless years, this finger still seemed to be white like jade, slender, and tough. The striations on the skin were like natural markings of the Tao, and they emanated a boundless and mysterious aura. When Lin Sun looked at it, he couldn't help but gasp. It was just a finger, but it gave him a terrible mental pressure. It was as if he had seen a god. At this moment, a heroic voice resonated in the air. 1,600 years of the martial Tao calendar. Duel with the current Great Emperor Zhen Su at the chaotic Sky Ridge. Zhen Su was the first great emperor to create the great Tao of true void, and he was the ancestor of a Tao. He was extraordinary and reigned supreme in the world. Unfortunately, he couldn't resist 3 of my attacks. I left his finger here to mourn his Tao of true void. The voice vanished just like that. Both the mysterious woman and Lin Sun were visibly moved. Who was that heroic voice? Why did it suddenly resound? The most unbelievable thing was that even with the mysterious woman's strength, she was actually unable to locate the source of the voice. Lin Sun pondered and said, "This should be the voice of the Overlord. It's very likely that it's a brand. When our consciousness comes into contact with this finger, the voice will resound along with it." The mysterious woman nodded, and then she stared at the finger and said, "An Imperial Realm expert that created a Grand Tao is equivalent to the ancestor of a Grand Tao. His resources and reserves are so terrifying that it's sufficient to look down upon the world, and his disciples and grand disciples address him as the Tao ancestor. However, he was actually unable to resist 3 moves before losing a finger." Her voice carried a solemn and shocked tone. If that was the case, then how terrifying was the combat strength of the Overlord? While pondering, the mysterious woman came to a nearby tomb. There was also a stone table here, and on it was a broken glass lamp. It was simple and unadorned. Lin Sun walked over to take a look. Even his soul palpitated as if it would break out of his shell and be sucked into the broken glass lamp in the next moment. Buzz! The mysterious woman patted his shoulder lightly, and the terrifying suction force disappeared. Lin Sun couldn't help but be shocked. What kind of treasure was this? In the year 3400 of the martial Tao calendar, the Tao fire of the Glass Palace was at its peak. The palace master of the Glass Palace was highly skilled and was conferred the title Celestial Glaze. He wielded the Emperor's Tao weapon 3,000 illusionary space lamps. The heroic and unruly voice resounded again. I and Celestial Glaze had a duel in the Fufeng Sea. After 3 days of fierce battle, Celestial Glaze was defeated by me and admitted defeat. I left his treasure 3,000 illusionary space lamps as a memento. Lin Sun and the mysterious woman couldn't calm down again. There was no doubt that the broken glass lamp on the stone table in front of the tomb was the 3,000 illusionary space lamps regarded as the Emperor's Tao weapon. How strong was the Overlord? Lin Sun smacked his lips. He tried to pick up the broken glass lamp to observe it, but was stopped by the mysterious woman. This is just an illusion. The real treasure should be buried under this tomb. After a pause, she continued, "Observe the layout of this cemetery. It's better not to act rashly." Lin Sun nodded with awe in his heart. Soon, the mysterious woman took Lin Sun to the 3rd tomb. On the stone table, there was a bloody picture scroll. On the picture scroll, There are the words, "Even if I die, I will not regret the great path," written in a bloody and glaring ancient character. Without any surprise, the heroic voice resounded again. Up until now, the most amazing person I've seen is definitely Lu Daozi. This person entered the Tao through painting and became a saint through painting. In just 300 years, he set foot on the great emperor realm and was regarded as the wonderful hand-painting emperor by the world. I couldn't help but want to learn from him. Alas, although Lu Daozi's painting skills were wonderful, he couldn't defeat me. After he was defeated, he wrote a scroll with his emperor's blood as ink and his finger as a brush. He gave it to me and kept it until now. Lin Sun and the mysterious woman looked at each other and remained silent. They continued to move forward. There was a stone table in front of each tomb, on which there were items left. There were broken swords, broken armors, blood-stained horns, white bones, mysterious branches. It was a dazzling array. At the same time, the heroic voice continued to resound. Above the starry sky, in all the heavens, North Black Sword Emperor has the highest realm among those who fought with me. Unfortunately, he is not as good as me. I left his broken sword as a memory. In the 7,400th year of martial Tao calendar, I searched all the heavens, traveled around the starry sky, and entered the land of ultimate. I met a reclusive emperor and fought with him for 300 years. Isn't it great? It is said that there is a Buddhist master living in seclusion in the drunken mountain of the whirling world. I went to visit him in the 1,900th year of martial Tao calendar. Every single item possessed an origin that could shock the all heavens, and their owners were great figures that were unprecedented in the all heavens. But in the end, they were all defeated by the Lord of Tongtian. This made the mysterious woman more and more silent, and her heart seemed to be very restless. As for Lin Sun, he had already been shocked to the point of numbness. In Lin Sun's previous understanding, the Lord of Tongtian who broke the Gate of Stars was undoubtedly very strong, but he didn't expect that the Lord of Tongtian was so powerful. For countless years, he searched all the heavens and traveled all over the void, only seeking defeat. How invincible must he be to dare to roam the world like this? When they arrived at the last tomb, Lin Sun and the mysterious woman were stunned. There was nothing on the stone table in front of the tomb. Moreover, the heroic voice didn't ring out again. This was very unusual. Why was there an empty stone table here? There are a total of 1,009 tombs here. 1,008 of them represent opponents who were defeated by the Lord of Tongtian. Even the weakest of his opponents was a martial emperor. Perhaps the Lord of Tongtian didn't care about those below the martial emperor realm. The mysterious woman was silent for a moment before she said, "Moreover, as time passed, the strength of the opponents who were defeated by the Lord of Tongtian grew more and more terrifying. But they all lost in the end. This shows how powerful the Lord of Tongtian was back then." She couldn't help but sigh at the end. She had lost a lot of her memories and was like a wandering ghost, but her eyesight and judgment hadn't disappeared. Therefore, she knew very well how dazzling the Lord of Tongtian's achievements were. They were enough to shock the world and shock the world. However, such a legendary figure should have left his name in history and be revered by the future generations. Why had his name not been recorded in the annals of history? The mysterious woman had traveled around the ancient desolation realm a long time ago. She had met many peerless figures during her travels, but she had never heard of the Lord of Tongtian's achievements. This was undoubtedly unimaginable. Moreover, the mysterious woman didn't know any of the figures represented by the 1,008 tombs in the cemetery. Martial Tao calendar. Martial Tao calendar. Why do I feel vaguely familiar with it? But I can't remember it. The mysterious woman murmured. She was sure that there had never been a method to calculate the year of the martial Tao calendar in the ancient desolation realm. Obviously, what the Lord of Tongtian had experienced didn't happen in the ancient desolation realm, and it was very likely that it had nothing to do with the starry sky ancient path. Lin Sun, who was standing next to her, thought, Could it be that the Lord of Tongtian came from the other side of the starry sky? As far as he knew, the heaven-accessing secret area was brought by his mother, Luo Qingxuan, and Master Lu from the other side of the starry sky. Chapter 1699. Both Lin Sun and the mysterious woman were lost in thought. The graveyard was filled with chaotic immortal mist, and 9 tombs stood erect, as if they had been here since time immemorial. Suddenly, a strange wave spread in the ancient graveyard like a tide. Lin Sun felt the scene in front of him suddenly change, and when his vision cleared up, he couldn't help but be stunned. The ancient graveyard was gone, and so was the mysterious woman. He seemed to have appeared in another strange world. This place was filled with luxuriant grass and luxuriant ancient trees. A thatched hut was located there, and a clear stream flowed around the thatched hut like a jade belt. The air was filled with holy and pure chaotic immortal mist, and it was like a paradise. A majestic figure stood in front of the thatched cottage with his hands clasped behind his back. He wore a wide-sleeved white robe, and his long hair was loose. His appearance was simple and unsophisticated, like a real immortal who didn't eat the food of the mortal world. But there was an invisible momentum around him, as if he was the ruler of the 9 heavens, looking down on all the heavens. It was that majestic figure. No, it was the Skirich Master. Lin Sun almost blurted out. He almost couldn't believe his eyes. He didn't expect that everything would change in the blink of an eye. As for himself, he had finally met the true Lord of Skyspan. Over the years, there have been many people who have passed the 9 gates of the great path of green clouds, but you're the only one who has been able to open that door. The Skirich Master smiled, as if he had been waiting for Lin Sun. His voice also carried a strange calming power, like the morning bell and evening drum, causing people to unconsciously feel close to him upon hearing it. Come here, fated person. The Skirich Master sat down at a stone table in front of the thatched cottage, took out a teapot and 2 teacups, and began to brew tea. Lin Sun was stunned for a while, and then he took a deep breath, tried to keep calm, and walked over. Junior Lin Sun greets Senior. Lin Sun cupped his hands. Take a seat. Don't stand on ceremony. You were chosen by the heaven-accessing place and successfully arrived here, so you are fated to meet me. As the Skirich Lord spoke, he handed Lin Sun a cup of steaming hot tea that emanated a fragrant aroma. What you see in front of you is only a strand of an imprint that I left behind. The real me. Haha, perhaps it has already disappeared from this world. When he spoke up to here, he smiled light-heartedly and spoke in a heroic manner. All those years ago, I'd once seen the eternal star path, and life and death were no different than floating clouds to me. Being able to meet a fated person at this moment is sufficient to comfort my entire life. For a moment, Lin Sun didn't know what to say, and his emotions surged. Even though he was only looking at the will brand of the Skyspan Lord, he was still shaken to the core. This was a legendary figure that could shake the world. In the past, at least 1,000 emperors and above had lost to him. The Skirich Lord suddenly stopped smiling and said seriously, "Little guy, let me ask you, are you willing to take me as your master?" Lin Sun's fingers trembled, and the teacup in his hand almost fell. His expression became very interesting. He had never expected the Skirich Lord to be so direct. Moreover, the Skirich Lord was offering an opportunity that every cultivator in the world dreamed of taking him as their master. For a moment, Lin Sun was stunned. The Skirich Lord couldn't help laughing. He seemed to find Lin Sun's reaction amusing. He said, "Boy, you have no idea how difficult it is to enter this place." As he spoke, he told Lin Sun the reason. In this world, those who could obtain the heaven-accessing place were all people with great luck. However, after obtaining the heaven-accessing place, one must first pass the test of the green cloud path. These tests were aimed at understanding potential, talent, state of mind, strength, fighting skills, and so on. Passing through these tests was equivalent to going through a series of selections. Those who could stand out were all the most amazing, peerless figures in the world. Only then could one truly reach the heaven-accessing door. And this door was the most difficult one. For example, Xianshanshan in primitive times was a peerless swordsman who was so amazing that even the mysterious woman felt sorry for him. However, in the end, he could only push open a small gap. Lin Sun, on the other hand, was the only person who had pushed open this door since the beginning of the heaven accessing place. That was why the Skirich Lord had directly said that he wanted to take Lin Sun as his disciple. Only then did Lin Sun realize that all the tests he had gone through were just a means for the Skirich Lord to take him as his disciple. If you are willing, you can take me as your master now. As long as you open your mind, I can fuse everything I have learned in this life into a mark and leave it in your heart. The Skirich Lord's voice was gentle and his smile was warm. It was obvious that he was very happy and did not conceal his admiration for Lin Sun. Lin Sun couldn't help but be tempted. After witnessing the scenes in the graveyard, he had long since determined that the Skirich Lord was absolutely an unimaginably powerful existence. In his cultivation career, more than 1,000 experts no weaker than the martial emperor realm had been defeated by him. If he could take the Skirich Lord as his master, which cultivator in the world could refuse? However, after thinking silently for a long time, Lin Sun sighed and said, "To tell you the truth, I already have a master." As for the matter of taking him as my master, before Lin Sun could finish speaking, the Skirich Lord couldn't help but throw his head back and burst into laughter. His voice was filled with unparalleled arrogance. "Little fellow, in the world, besides me, who else is qualified to pass on the Tao to you?" The Skirich Lord's words were filled with disdain for all the heroes of the world. Lin Sun thought for a moment, but in the end, he shook his head and said, "This has nothing to do with strength. Moreover, I have cultivated for so long, and I already have my own Tao path." In other words, he did not lack any guidance to pass on the Tao. The Skirich Lord was stunned. He looked at Lin Sun in surprise and said, "Little fellow, are you serious? You should know that you only need to nod your head, and you will inherit my mantle. In the future, not to mention becoming an emperor, it will not be difficult for you to surpass the martial emperor realm." To his surprise, Lin Sun shook his head again and said apologetically, "I have disappointed you, senior." The smile on the Skirich Lord's face disappeared. After a moment of silence, he sighed and said, "I never thought that there would be such a strange young man like you in the world. Moreover, you just had to come here. Fate makes fools of people. Is my mantle going to end here?" His voice was filled with loneliness and desolation. Lin Sun could not bear it, but before he could say anything, the Skirich Lord said, "Little fellow, this strand of my will is about to disappear. Even if you do not take me as your master, can you accept my inheritance? In the future, when you find a fated person, can you help me accept him as my disciple?" At the end of his words, he could not help but laugh at himself. How about, "I beg you"? How could Lin Sun still refuse when the Skirich Lord had already said so? However, just as he was about to nod his head, a cold voice suddenly rang out. "Don't agree to him. This fellow is no longer the true Skirich Lord." The mysterious woman's figure appeared extremely far away. Her face was cold. "What?" Lin Sun's expression changed drastically. At the same time, the Skirich Lord frowned and said unhappily, "How dare you? I want to accept a disciple. How dare you, a little remnant soul, speak such nonsense? You have a death wish." Before the Skirich Lord's voice died away, he waved his sleeve. Boom! The mysterious woman's body seemed to be engulfed by a terrifying force. Before she could react, she suddenly disappeared. Lin Sun was horrified, and his scalp went numb. He knew very well how powerful the mysterious woman was. But now, she could not withstand a single blow from the Skirich Lord. Silence fell. The Skirich Lord sighed softly. "I am indeed no longer myself. I'm just a strand of my will. Don't be alarmed, little fellow. Open your mind and accept the inheritance." The voice seemed to have a magical power that calmed Lin Sun's mind and made him want to obey. It was as if a family member was nagging at him. But soon, Lin Sun bit the tip of his tongue and sobered up completely. He stared at the Skirich Lord and said, "Senior, I appreciate your kind intentions, but I cannot comply. Farewell." With that, he tried to get up, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not move his body. He was completely imprisoned. He could not even lift a finger. His expression immediately changed. At the same time, the Skirich Lord looked disappointed. As he sipped on his tea, he murmured, "I just wanted to accept a disciple and pass on my mantle. Then I would fight my way to the eternal star path. Why did I wait for so many years, only to receive such an idiot?" His voice was also filled with disappointment, as if he was extremely disappointed. But now, there was a trace of coldness and awe-inspiring between his eyebrows. He was like a terrifying ancient demon god, completely different from before. Before, he had been heroic and handsome, with his hair and beard fluttering in the wind. He had the aura of an immortal or a god, as if he was above the common populace. His actions were bold and unrestrained, making people feel as if they were bathing in a spring breeze. But now, his aura was terrifying to the extreme. Lin Sun felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave, and his whole body went cold. How could he have imagined that what lay behind the Skirich door was not some supreme good fortune or opportunity? Instead, it was a terrifying and treacherous will imprint. Or perhaps the mysterious woman was right. The Skirich Lord before him was no longer the real him. "Isn't it good that I bestow you with good fortune and pass on my mantle to you? Why do you keep rejecting me? In the past, no one has ever dared to embarrass me like this." The Skirich Lord looked at Lin Sun and said in a low voice, "Young man, let me tell you something that you don't like to hear. If I were alive, I wouldn't even take a glance at a person like you. You're too insignificant." Lin Sun's expression was cloudy and uncertain. He forcibly suppressed the throbbing and shock in his heart and said directly, "Tell me, what do you want to do?" "Take me as your disciple," said the Skirich Lord without hesitation. "I'll fuse all my wisdom, experience, and knowledge into your body. When that time comes, who in all the heavens can do anything to you? Who would dare to look down on you?" At the end of his words, he suddenly stood up, his wide sleeves fluttering in the wind. There was an indescribable fanaticism between his eyebrows. "When that time comes, you'll carry on my will and embark on the supreme path of cultivation. You'll break through the gate of stars again, kill your way to the eternal star path, and kill all your enemies." His voice was like thunder, and his killing intent pierced the sky. Of course, there are great opportunities in the Skirich door. However, the Skirich Lord is no longer the real him. This will imprint can be regarded as a dark obsession of the Skirich Lord. Chapter 17:01. The Lord of Skirich's demeanor was wild, as if he had gone mad. Lin Sun suddenly calmed down. How could the Lord of Skirich be such a gloomy, ruthless, and crazy person? The mysterious woman was right. He was no longer the Lord of Skirich, but just a strand of his will that had been waiting here for a long time. If the real Lord of Skirich was still alive, how could he have pinned all his hopes on taking in a disciple? In other words, the Lord of Skirich's original intention was to leave a strand of his will to pass on his mantle. That was why he left the heaven-accessing place, waiting for the destined one to open the door. Of course, the heaven-span Lord could never have imagined that, after waiting for so many years, the will mark he had left behind would completely change. This strand of will inherited the Lord of Skirich's obsession with the eternal star path, but did not inherit the Lord of Skirich's state of mind. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun said, "If I don't agree, you won't get what you want even if you kill me." The Lord of Skirich's smile faded, and he stared at Lin Sun coldly. "It doesn't matter whether you agree or not. In a moment, I will integrate my wisdom into your mind, my will into your body, and my inheritance into your cultivation. In short, you will be me, and I will be you. You and I will be master and disciple. We will live together in this world and cultivate together. I will help you kill your enemies, and we will kill my enemies together. In the end, we will reach the extreme of the Great Way, control all Tao, and become the master of all heavens." The Lord of Skirich's expression became fanatical, even crazy. "At that time, if you want to leave me, I will give you another body." Hearing this, Lin Sun felt a chill in his body and mind. Was this possession? No. This was to leave his wisdom, mind, and will behind, and then completely integrate with the other and share a body. But how could he still be himself at that time? Lin Sun said coldly, I never could have guessed that the mighty Lord of Heavenspan was such a peerless and lofty figure when he was alive. He roamed the many heavens, hoping to be defeated. Who could have guessed that after he died, the wisp of will he left behind would choose to betray him? How sad. The Skyspan Lord's expression was cold and indifferent. There's no point in trying to goad me into action. You're right. When I was alive, I was indeed different from who I am now. But that doesn't matter anymore. As long as I can reopen the gate of stars and fight my way to the eternal path of stars. So what if I betray everyone in the world? My disciple, this is a supreme fortune that you should have enjoyed. With me fusing into your body, you'll definitely be able to trample the heavens beneath your feet in the future. At this point, the Skirich master smiled faintly. My dear disciple, once you experience the power I can bring you, you will no longer hate me. Whoosh! His figure suddenly turned into a ray of light and drilled into Lin Sun's eyebrows. At this moment, Lin Sun had no time to react. Coupled with the fact that his body was completely imprisoned, he was destined to be unable to resist. He could only watch everything happen helplessly. Even Lin Sun was sure that even if he resisted, it would be futile in the face of such an unimaginably terrifying existence. A piercing pain came from his soul. Lin Sun had no time to think. It was as if his soul had been torn apart by a sharp awl, and an incomparably terrifying cold current rushed into his soul. At the same time, a similar terrifying power was madly attacking his body and mind. It wanted to occupy his body and seize his Taoist heart. The most frightening thing was that from beginning to end, Lin Sun was unable to resist at all. He could only quietly feel everything happening. While his mind was still clear, Lin Sun couldn't help but laugh at himself. The mysterious woman had bitterly waited for a big secret for countless years, an opportunity that he himself had been looking forward to. In the end, it turned out to be a great disaster. Who could have thought of it? Gradually, an incomparably painful feeling of tearing apart surged from his soul, body, and mind. Lin Sun's consciousness began to blur. It was an indescribable feeling of powerlessness and helplessness. Buzz. Suddenly, a strange, blazing, obscure torrent of energy was produced in the spiritual vein in Lin Sun's chest, and it spread out. Almost at the same time, the Lord of Skirich's shocked, confused, and angry roar rang out. The great abyss devours the sky. No, how is this possible? How is this possible? Lin Sun's originally blurry consciousness suddenly became a little clearer, and he saw a glimmer of hope again. Could it be that his talent was enough to make the Lord of Skirich, a wisp of willpower, afraid? All the terrifying attacks came to an abrupt end at this moment. The Lord of Skirich's voice trembled as if he had encountered the most terrifying thing in the world. He seemed to be in disbelief and unwilling to accept it. Impossible, impossible. This boy, he's actually my descendant. Boom! In an instant, Lin Sun felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Luo Tongtian, descendant? Could the Lord of Skirich be an ancestor of his mother, Luo Qingshuan's bloodline? This was so sudden that Lin Sun, whose consciousness was already blurry, felt completely blank and at a loss. This guy who wanted to take everything from him was actually his relative? The absurdity of the world and the tricks of fate were nothing more than this. Damn heaven! You caused me to suffer a crushing defeat in the eternal star path, and now you want to destroy my last hope of revenge. How cruel! The Lord of Skirich's voice was filled with incomparable anger, sorrow, and hatred. Perhaps even he did not expect that the young man whom he had waited for countless years to finally push open the door to have in his body. The blood of his bloodline flowed in his body. Is this the consequence of opening the path of stars? Is this revenge against me? Otherwise, why would you arrange for this boy to push open the door? Why? Damn it, I don't believe it. I'm no longer Luo Tongtian. I'm just a wisp of obsession. Moreover, I'm passing on my teachings to my descendants. Yes, I'm passing on my teachings. Only my descendants are worthy of fighting on the eternal star path with me. Lord Skyspan howled, gasping for breath. He seemed to be on the verge of going berserk. Boom! Almost at the same time, the terrible pain erupted again, and Lin Sun almost fainted. He was shocked and angry, and he completely understood. Even though the Lord of Skirich was related to him by blood, the Lord of Skirich in front of him was no longer the Lord of Skirich in the past. In order to fight on the eternal star path again, this wisp of obsession, which had completely betrayed the Lord of Skirich, was clearly going to attack him at all costs. Whoosh, the origin spirit vein glowed, and strange and obscure fluctuations flowed through it. However, it was no longer able to resist the invasion of that terrible power. Helplessness and unwillingness welled up in Lin Sun's heart again. The most absurd and cruel thing in the world was actually happening to him. Lin Sun did not know how to describe his feelings at this moment. Kid, since you are my descendant, you should know that I'm only doing this for your own good. I won't harm you. In the future, when I become the sole ruler of all heavens, I will return everything to you and let you enjoy eternity with me. The Lord of Skirich's voice was hoarse and low. Obviously, he had regained his composure. There was a touch of guilt in his words, as well as a kind of determination that he would not give up until he achieved his goal. I'm not your descendant. You are just a wisp of obsession that betrayed me, a mad dog that is worse than trash. Lin Sun gritted his teeth and cursed. His mind began to show signs of collapse, and his consciousness began to blur. He really could not hold on any longer. Oh, what a strong and unyielding character. You are indeed my descendant, the Lord of Skirich exclaimed. However, his actions became more and more violent. He also had the devouring abyss in those days. It was with this Tao that he plundered all the Tao in the world for his own use and defeated all the enemies in the heavens. And it was also because he knew the mystery of the devouring abyss that he calmed down at this moment. Another idea came to him. Could it be that God is helping me? It must be. Perhaps God can't bear to see me fail miserably and wants to give me a hand to fight on the eternal star path again. The power of Lin Sun's origin spirit vein was about to break through and completely occupy his mind, soul, and will. A wisp of tranquil, vast, and bizarre aura suddenly emerged in Lin Sun's body. At this moment, the Lord of Skirich's movements came to an abrupt halt. The power distributed in Lin Sun's body also seemed to be startled and suddenly gathered in one place. Who is it? The Lord of Skirich roared. At this moment, his power was entrenched in Lin Sun's mind, but no matter how hard he searched, he could not find the source of that bizarre aura. But soon, one after another, mysterious ancient characters, which seemed to be cast by the Great Way, emerged in Lin Sun's mind like a dream and illusion. Stepping on the starry Han's shoes, I stroll up the Kunlun Mountains. Lifting my sleeves to embrace the sun and moon, the heavens enter my palms. I come from a mortal world and lightly knock on the longevity gate. The wonderful method reveals one's nature, and the Tao is given to the predestined one. This was a Taoist hymn, flowing with sacred and vast light. But in the eyes of the Lord of Skirich, it was as if he was looking at the most terrifying existence in the world. He suddenly roared furiously, a Taoist hymn of impartation. Which bastard dares to leave such a mark in the body of my queen, Luo Tongtian? A Taoist hymn of impartation was a kind of mark left behind when imparting knowledge. It represented the master's recognition of his disciple, and the person who possessed this Taoist hymn was the rightful successor of the master of the Taoist hymn. You want to forcibly seize the cultivation of the successor of my mountain of innermost heart with a mere mark of your will? You're overestimating yourself. Back off. An ethereal laughter rang out like a breeze, and the voice was like the Tao, ethereal and traceless. Before the voice had died away, the Taoist hymn that appeared in Lin Sun's mind was like a giant net made of Taoist characters, and it enveloped the power of the Lord of Skirich. Boom! The Lord of Skirich retreated without hesitation. He sensed extreme danger, and if he did not retreat, he would be imprisoned and erased in an instant. Whoosh, the next moment, the figure of the Lord of Skirich appeared outside Lin Sun's body, but his face had already turned livid and incomparably grim. Almost immediately, he saw a pagoda that seemed to be made of glazed divine gold fly out of Lin Sun's body, spinning in the void and shining brightly. Chapter 17:03. The pagoda was octagonal in shape and exuded a jade-like divine golden light. It was sacred and boundless. It floated in the void as if it could suppress the past and present. The great Tao is endless. The Skyspan Lord narrowed his eyes. With his strength, he could clearly see a line of Tao characters imprinted on the surface of the great Tao's endless pagoda. Each stroke was like a natural convergence of the great Tao. However, there were several ancient characters that were incomplete, making it impossible to read. But the Skyspan Lord could see them. Or rather, he remembered the origin of the pagoda. The great Tao's endless pagoda. You're the old man who sat on the cloud mat of the 9 heavens and held the great Tao's horsetail whisk. You're not a Buddhist, not a Taoist, not a Confucian, and not a demon. There was a hint of surprise in his voice. A dust-laden memory surfaced in the Skyspan Lord's mind. A long, long time ago, he had searched the heavens and traversed the boundless star fields just to find a worthy opponent. He remembered that it was one of the 4 great ancient Tao ruins, the Bottomless Ruins. He had fought with a martial emperor who lived in seclusion there. Later, although the martial emperor had been defeated by him, the martial emperor had smiled and said, "If that senior in the Bottomless Ruins were to make a move, you would definitely lose." At that time, the Skyspan Lord had been skeptical. He had searched the Bottomless Ruins and experienced countless dangers, but in the end, he had come up empty-handed. Just when he thought that the senior, the martial emperor had spoken of didn't exist. However, a voice rang in his ears. "I saw everything you did before, but you couldn't even see where I was. How could you even talk about a duel? Even if you fought, you had no chance of winning." That one sentence caused the Skyspan Lord's body to stiffen as if he had suffered the heaviest blow. Just before he left the Bottomless Ruins, he had caught a glimpse of a figure sitting high above the 9 heavens, holding a horsetail whisk and controlling a pagoda. His power was boundless. In just one glance, the figure had disappeared. But the Skyspan Lord would never forget that experience. He had tried to divine that figure countless times, but in the end, he had come up empty-handed. A very long time later, when he was a practically invincible existence beneath the heavens, he finally understood how terrifying the cultivation of that figure he saw all those years ago was. However, at that time, he'd resolved to enter the eternal star path and search for a great fortune that was truly eternal, so he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to anything else. According to his ambition, if he were to see that figure again in the future, he would definitely have another contest and compete with him. It was a pity that he had failed in the eternal star path. As for the competition, there was no way to talk about it. Never could the Lord of Heavenspan have imagined that, after all these years, his descendant would be carrying the same pagoda. For a time, he was stunned, and an indescribable feeling surged in his heart. After waiting for countless years, he had thought that he had found a hope that would allow him to kill his way back to the Eternal Star Road. In the end, it was the descendant who had the blood of his bloodline flowing in his veins. It was like fate was toying with him, and it seemed like it had been predetermined a long time ago. It caused a figure like him to be unable to help but lose control and find it difficult to control himself. But in the end, he'd still hardened his heart. For the sake of achieving his desire, he didn't care about anything else. But who would have imagined that he would discover a Tao teaching Gatha left behind by the person who had once dealt him the heaviest blow in the past on his descendant? This seemed like an indistinct karma, and it caused the Lord of Heavenspan to be unable to help but wonder if this was a form of revenge. Is it because I've destroyed the door of stars, and that's why the Lord of Heavenspan is unable to tolerate my rise again? Fellow Taoist, karma and retribution aren't difficult for you. You're the one who's making things difficult for yourself. The Grand Tao tower flowed with a divine glow, and it emanated an ethereal and indistinct voice that sounded like a cool breeze. Bullshit. The Lord of Heaven's span was furious, and his eyes almost split apart from rage. I've persisted in pursuing the Tao, yet the damnable heavens refuse to allow me to enter the eternal star road again. How could it be that I've taken things too hard? Bang! The Grand Tao tower glowed, and it emanated a boundless and blazing glow of the Tao that was boundless and heavy as it smashed down. With a thump, the Lord of Heaven's span was directly suppressed, and he knelt on the ground. This peerless figure who had once conquered the heavens and sought only to be defeated was actually unable to withstand a single strike from the Grand Tao tower. Even though he wasn't the Lord of Heaven's span from back then, and was only a strand of Willem print that had turned into madness, not long ago, he had defeated the mysterious woman with a flick of his sleeve. From this, it could be seen that the power of the Grand Tao tower wasn't something a strand of Will like him could resist. What are you doing? The Lord of Heaven's span was enraged, and he wanted to rise up and attack, but his body was firmly suppressed by the boundless light of the Tao. Moreover, as the light of the Tao poured down, his body was slowly being obliterated. A strand of stubborn will. If the Lord of Heaven's span from back then had seen this, I wouldn't even need to do anything. You would have been wiped out with a flip of your hand. The ethereal and clear voice resounded once more from within the Grand Tao tower. Just who are you? The Lord of Heaven's span roared, his eyes bloodshot, and he looked incomparably ferocious. I'm just a strand of the aura of a teaching Taoism. If you hadn't tried to steal my legacy, I wouldn't have appeared. So you're the Lord of Minuscule Mountain? Since you're my master, why can't you tolerate me? Is it wrong for me to pass on my Tao to my descendants? The Lord of Heavenspan's body was collapsing, and he was on the verge of disappearing. However, he wasn't willing to accept this, and continued to struggle and howl. You can leave your Tao behind, but your obsession must be eliminated. The ethereal voice sounded like a decree from the highest ruler of the 9 heavens. It was ethereal and calm, but left no room for doubt. The Lord of Heaven's span laughed mournfully. At the end of the day, you're just like the villainous heavens. You can't tolerate me. Ha ha! This dog's hit great Tao made me wait for countless years, but in the end, it was all for naught. Naught. Ha ha ha. His voice was filled with boundless unwillingness and hatred. If your true self were here, you would never say such words. In the end, you're just a strand of obsession. It's laughable that you're lamenting in vain. From the beginning to the end, the indistinct voice was ethereal and peaceful. The Lord of Heavenspan's figure became more and more transparent, blurring more and more. Before he disappeared, he suddenly revealed a mocking smile and said in a hoarse voice, "This pagoda is damaged. It must have suffered a great calamity. I'm just a strand of obsession, but what are you? You're just a strand of the aura of a teaching him. If you're really the Lord of Minuscule Mountain, why did my descendant come to the heaven-accessing place to hone his Tao?" At the end of his words, he seemed to realize something and burst out laughing. "Let me guess, your true self hasn't died like me, right? Ha ha, that must be the case. The villainous heavens haven't let me off, so when will they let you off?" The voice stopped abruptly. The Lord of Heavenspan's figure completely collapsed, turning into a rain of light that lingered in the void, sparkling and resplendent. This was the Tao left by the Lord of Heavenspan, and it was where his mantle lay. Whoosh! The tower of endless Tao glowed, and the sparkling Tao poured into the body of Lin Sun, who had long been in a coma, and integrated into his mind. Magically, a star atlas emerged in Lin Sun's mind, absorbing all the sparkling Tao, and then disappeared again. Villainous heavens? It doesn't exist at all. You've never understood what Tao is eternal means. The ethereal voice let out a sigh. Vaguely, an ethereal figure seemed to walk out of the tower of endless Tao. It came to Lin Sun, who was in a coma and slightly bowed down. Back then, that man's style was unparalleled. I thought he could succeed, but I never thought he would be defeated by a strand of obsession. Well, let his Tao be inherited by his descendant. As long as the Tao exists, the Tao fire will never die out. Immediately, the ethereal figure disappeared abruptly. The Tower of Endless Tao suddenly turned into a ray of light and returned to Lin Sun's body. Everything that had happened earlier was like an unreal illusion, and it didn't leave a single trace behind. Lin Sun seemed to have had a strange dream. In the dream, he heard the furious roar of the Lord of Tongtian, with unwillingness and despair. Then there was a burst of crazy laughter. Then he saw a vast starry sky, in which countless stars circulated, the galaxy reversed, and the vast Zhou void. A stalwart figure was developing Tao in the starry sky. With loose sleeves and a wide belt, his hair was loose, and his appearance was simple and elegant. He was majestic and heroic, like the ruler of all heavens. Every move he made attracted the power of Tao, making the boundless starry sky tremble, the vast Zhou void resonate, and the sound of Tao resound throughout the world. Lin Sun had a strong intuition that it was Luo Tongtian, the real master of Tongtian, and not the stubborn Will Imprint. Because only the real Lord of Tongtian was qualified to have that kind of peerless style and invincible aura. Gradually, the dream became blurred. The Lord of Tongtian, the boundless Zhou void and the stars in the starry sky, finally turned into a strange star atlas symbol. Then, it suddenly exploded, turning into a dazzling rain of light. Lin Sun, who was in a coma, suddenly woke up. He sat up and looked around, only to find that everything had changed. The thatched hut with lush flowers and trees, the gurgling stream, and the will imprint of the Lord of Tongtian were gone. In all directions, there were tombs one after another. There were a total of 1,009 tombs. Except for the last one, there were all kinds of strange objects placed on the stone tables in front of the other tombs. It was that cemetery. Lin Sun was stunned. Could it be that everything that he had experienced before was all a dream? But it was too real, no. This was definitely not a dream. Lin Sun took a few deep breaths, trying to calm himself down. At this moment, he felt a ripple in his mind. Then, all kinds of mysterious power of inheritance appeared in his mind. In a trance, Lin Sun seemed to see the vast starry sky again, with billions of stars flowing in it, and a peerless figure developing Tao in it. Thanks to 469618842 for the tip. Chapter 1704. Zhou Su trembled, and the stars resonated. The Skirich Lord's imposing figure was like the incarnation of the Great Path. Every move he made was filled with a mysterious and unfathomable power of the Great Path. In Lin Sun's mind, all kinds of comprehension of the Great Path surged like a raging torrent. In the end, the Skirich Lord's figure suddenly came to a halt. He stretched out his right arm into the void and gently pointed. Billions of stars suddenly exploded and were annihilated. The vast Zhou void shattered like glass and vanished into thin air. Boom! At the same time, the terrifying power that emerged from the explosion of the Zhou Su and the destruction of the stars was all swallowed into the Skirich Lord's body. His power was suddenly much more terrifying than before. His figure was like a huge black hole in the universe. The place where he stood was already a void, but as he took a step forward, the void was also swallowed up and split open. After that, the mysterious eternal star path appeared. All the comprehension came to an abrupt end. Lin Sun suddenly woke up with a start. An inheritance was clearly imprinted in his mind. Devour the heavens and devour the earth. Seize the power of the Zhou Su for my use. The Zhou Su is boundless. My power is boundless. My body is boundless. My magic is boundless. All kinds of mysterious and obscure inheritance rippled and turned into the boundless devouring scripture. This was a core inheritance of the Great Path. It was a true scripture of the Great Path that the Skirich Lord had created after countless years of conquest. Moreover, the core of this scripture was the talent devouring the abyss. It could be said that this boundless devouring scripture was a supreme scripture that the Skirich Lord had created specifically for the devouring the abyss. In the past, the Skirich Lord, who had mastered this scripture, had defeated many powerhouses in the heavens. If it were any other cultivator, even if they obtained this scripture, they would not be able to comprehend its mysteries. Because without the talent of the devouring the abyss, everything would be in vain. But for Lin's son, cultivating this scripture was not difficult at all. His entire body's legacy, his lifetime of experience, all merged into this scripture. When he was alive, the Skirich Lord truly lived up to his reputation as an outstanding existence that could shake both ancient and modern times. After silently comprehending it for a long time, Lin Sun could not help but sigh with emotion. This boundless devouring scripture was not just a simple cultivation technique. It contained the dissection of the grand Tao, the comprehension of the path towards the Tao, the elaboration of Tao arts. It could be said to be extensive, profound, and unprecedentedly rare. But the drawbacks were also obvious. Without the devouring abyss talent, it would be impossible to comprehend it. "You're awake?" A cold voice rang in Lin's ears, awakening him from his contemplation. He raised his head and saw that the mysterious woman had come to his side. The graveyard was empty, and the tombs stood towering like a forest. The mysterious woman's figure was coiled with strands of the light of the Tao. Her figure was slender and graceful, and she was like a celestial that had descended to the mortal world. Her appearance was impossible to see. Even so, it still gave Lin Sun a sense of sacredness. "You've been unconscious for a month," the mysterious woman added. Lin Sun was in a daze. A month had passed when he woke up from a dreamlike experience. "Senior, you weren't killed by the Lord of Heavenspan's obsession?" Lin Sun clearly remembered that it was the mysterious woman's warning that had prevented him from directly agreeing to the Skirich Master's proposal to take him in as a disciple. But it was also because of this that the mysterious woman had been blown away by the Skirich Master's blow and disappeared. At that time, Lin Sun had thought that the mysterious woman had met with misfortune. This heaven-accessing place is a treasure left by him. Although he's just an obsession, he's like a dominator here. Even I'm destined to be no match for him. But it's also very difficult for him to kill me. The mysterious woman's voice was cold and emotionless, as if she was talking about a trivial matter that had nothing to do with her. Lin Sun breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Senior, is the world behind the gate to heaven disappointing?" The mysterious woman said, "Misfortune and fortune depend on each other. After this disaster, I remember some things that happened a long time ago." She looked at Lin Sun and said, "And you, after going through a great tribulation, didn't you also obtain a great opportunity?" Lin Sun was silent for a moment, and then he nodded with a sigh. Although he had nearly lost his life when he pushed open the gate to heaven, he had also obtained some unexpected benefits. He finally knew that the Skirich Master's original name was Luo Tongtian. He was an ancestor of his mother's bloodline and had a close blood relationship with him. The legacy left by the Skirich Master was called the Infinite Devouring Scripture, and now he had obtained it. However, no matter how hard Lin Sun thought about it, he couldn't remember how the wisp of the Skirich Lords had been erased. Vaguely, he only vaguely remembered that the Taoist hymn inherited from Fongsuan Mountain once resounded in his heart. Is it the Great Tao, Bottomless Tower? Lin Sun was in a trance. Back in the ultimate ruins, that Taoist hymn, which seemed to be made of the Great Tao, had been kept in the Great Tao Bottomless Tower. Over the years, it had never appeared even once. Even when Lin Sun personally went to investigate, he couldn't find the aura of this Taoist hymn. It seemed to have disappeared in the Great Tao Bottomless Tower. Who would have thought that after so many years, this Taoist hymn would resound in his heart again? This made Lin Sun vaguely feel that his survival might have something to do with this Taoist hymn that had disappeared in the Great Tao Bottomless Tower. Apart from this, Lin Sun also had another most mysterious gain. The Star Atlas symbol that had merged into his heart and disappeared. But now, Lin Sun still didn't know the function of this Star Atlas symbol. He could only roughly infer that this thing might have something to do with the mysterious eternal star path. The secret in this door has been opened, and the power in it is fading. In less than 1,000 years, this heaven-accessing place will disappear completely. The mysterious woman said, "During this period, I plan to do closed-door training here. She looked at the nearby graveyard. There were 1,009 graves here. Apart from one that was empty, there was a stone table in front of each grave. There were all sorts of strange objects enshrined on the stone tables. To ordinary cultivators, this ancient graveyard was nothing more than a monument to the Lord of Heavenspan's countless years of battles and the glory he had accumulated. But in the eyes of the mysterious woman, each grave was full of mystery. Only those above the Emperor realm could see through the mystery. Closed-door training? Lin Sun was surprised. I told you a long time ago that I'm just a lonely ghost with no memory. I've been waiting in front of this door for a long time, just to get back my memory and know who I am. The mysterious woman said, "The power in this cemetery can help me." Lin Sun suddenly came to understand. Take this thing. In the future, you can no longer enter and exit the heaven accessing place as before. But you just need to activate this jade hairpin, and I will appear. The mysterious woman threw a jade hairpin to Lin Sun while saying, the jade hairpin was simple and unadorned. It was made of a mysterious pure black jade, with a character she engraved on it. Holding in his hand, Lin Sun felt warm and cool. I've gained a lot of advantages in opening the gate to heaven this time. Before the gate to heaven disappears, if you encounter a matter of life and death, you can ask me to help you. The mysterious woman said, remember, it's a matter of life and death. You already have the way you want to pursue, and you've also seen through the essence of not being trapped by external things. So you can do whatever you want, but don't go beyond the rules. In short, you can regard me as your Taoist protector. Lin Sun nodded and carefully took the jade hairpin. External things or external forces were also a part of one's combat power, such as treasures, the power of one's sect, the power of one's friends. If one blindly insisted on solving all problems with his own strength and despised and rejected external forces, he would fall into a rut and become inferior. As a mysterious woman said, he could do whatever he wanted as long as he didn't go beyond the rules. Next, I'll send you away. Do you have any other questions? The mysterious woman said. Lin Sun glanced at the tombs and suddenly said, Senior, you said before that you've never heard of the Lord of Tongtian in the ancient Desolation Realm, and you don't know the big shots behind these tombs were defeated by the Lord of Tongtian. After a pause, he continued, according to my speculation, the Lord of Tongtian and the figures represented by those tombs should all come from the other side of the starry sky. The mysterious woman was stunned, and a strange look appeared in her eyes. The other side of the starry sky? Lin Sun continued, there's also that empty tomb. I think it was left behind by the Skyspan Master for himself. I saw him with my own eyes, hefting a bronze coffin as he strode off into the distance. As for whether he's dead or alive, no one knows. You suspect that he's still alive? The mysterious woman asked in surprise. Lin Sun's dark eyes were deep. I can't say for sure. Then, Lin Sun bid farewell and planned to leave. The mysterious woman didn't ask him to stay. She waved her sleeve, and an invisible force wrapped around Lin Sun and brought him out of this place. Remember, my name is She. This was the voice of the mysterious woman that Lin Sun heard before he left the heaven-accessing secret land. She. Lin Sun remembered the jade hairpin that he had received as a gift. The word She was engraved on it as well. It turned out that this was her name. On an island in the Star Chest Sea, in a wooden house, Lin Sun opened his eyes slowly. The surroundings were dark, and he could vaguely hear the sound of waves hitting the rocks. Thinking of his experience in the heaven-accessing secret land, it felt like a lifetime had passed. After a long time, Lin Sun calmed down and spread out his divine senses. On the island, Old Toad and Alu were having a drinking contest. Their faces were flushed and they looked drowsy. However, both of them kept their eyes wide open, looking as if they were going to hang in there until the end. Neither of them would admit defeat. Little Silver and Little Tian were watching the battle and cheering for them. Further away, the big blackbird was pacing with a big black pot on its back. Its eyes were rolling, and it glanced at Old Toad and Alu from time to time, looking like a thief. Seeing this scene, Lin Sun smiled knowingly. He had no intention of coming out now. Having just obtained the mantle of the Lord of Tong Tian, Lin Sun was eager to try out the mysteries of the great endless devouring scripture, which used the star obliteration sky-devouring scripture as its core. Chapter 1706. Several days later, the bored old toad was squinting as it lay on a rock in a daze. Next to it, Alu was snoring away. Little Silver was cultivating the way of the sword, and his opponent was the demonic sky-splitter butterfly, Little Tian. The big black bird leaned lazily against its black pot, drinking wine. Toad, your big brother has already been in seclusion for more than a month. Why hasn't he woken up yet? I've already planned everything out. When we get to Sunset Tang Valley, the first thing I'll do is chop down that Fusang divine tree. Perhaps it was too bored, the big black bird couldn't help but speak up. This is a divine tree that has been famous since the primeval age. It contains the origin of Samadhi, true fire, and its branches and leaves are like fire that can support the heavens. Every leaf is comparable to a real sun and has miraculous uses. There's also the crow nest aqua. This treasure is a specialty of Sunset Tang Valley and is regarded as one of the 9 waters of the world. If one's soul is injured, a single drop of the crow nest aqua will immediately heal the injury. It's too wonderful for words. Let me think. In the territory of that flock of golden crows, there seems to be a type of blazing sun divine stone, which is an excellent material for crafting saint-grade armor. During the primeval times, when the devil crow great emperor hadn't attained his Tao, the scorching sun divine armor he wore was refined from this item. It's capable of blocking the full force strike of an eminent saint stage expert, and its defensive ability is so strong that it can be said to be rare in the world. As it spoke, the big black bird's saliva almost flowed out, and its eyes were full of desire. All in all, the golden crow's heritage is extremely ancient. Over the eons, the amount of treasures accumulated by the clan is absolutely beyond imagination. The old toad cast a sidelong glance at the big black bird and sneered. Look at your face. You haven't even gone to Sunset Tang Valley yet, but you're already planning to take everything from them. You're simply too black-hearted. Sigh. In cultivation, wealth, companions, techniques, and land are the most important. In the future, you'll understand what it means to regret having too little money when you need it. The big black bird heaved a long sigh. In ancient times, there was a powerful figure who had the qualifications, the foundation, and the ability to step into the emperor realm. But because his family was too poor, he didn't even have a decent tribulation treasure. In the end, when the emperor tribulation came, he was struck to death. Don't you think it was tragic? At that time, if he had a powerful treasure to protect himself, how could he have died? I'm afraid he has already become an emperor and is laughing at the heavens. Old Toad was skeptical. Really? The large black bird revealed a disdainful expression. You're ignorant, aren't you? Presently, all of you've already become saints, and the resources you require for cultivation can be said to be top-rate precious treasures in the world. Ordinary medicinal pills and spirit materials are utterly unable to satisfy your needs. Moreover, the more precious a treasure is, the rarer it is. If you don't have money in your hands, then why seek the Tao? I'm afraid you won't even be able to maintain your cultivation. Right now, you still don't have a deep understanding because you have obtained a huge amount of cultivation resources from the 9 regions battlefield, enough for you to squander and consume. However, as your cultivation increases in the future, sooner or later, there will be a time when you will be unable to make ends meet and be troubled by money. Do you know why people in the Emperor realm like you rarely stay in the ancient Desolation realm? The key is that the cultivation resources in the ancient Desolation realm can't meet their needs at all. The large black bird spoke with fervor and assurance, spittle flying everywhere. Old Toad laughed. In the end, it's nothing more than the wealth of the golden crow branch. But it's no use for you to be anxious now. My elder brother is still in closed-door cultivation. The large black bird complained. Your elder brother said that he wanted to go to the Sunset Tang Valley, but he hasn't taken any action yet. It's so torturous for me. Boom. At this moment, a horrible aura suddenly rushed out of the wooden house where Lin Sun was in closed-door cultivation and rushed straight to the sky. Vaguely, it was like a big abyss across the sky, covering the sky. For a moment, the spiritual energy in the nearby sea began to gather here, crazily, and was devoured by the vision of the big abyss. Bang, bang, bang. In the end, the devouring power became more and more terrifying. The sea exploded, the void collapsed and twisted, and the clouds in all directions collapsed. Old Toad and the large blackbird were both shocked. Alu, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly jumped up. Little Silver and Little Tian stopped what they were doing. Both of them were shocked. Their clothes were fluttering, and they could hardly keep their eyes open. They exerted all their strength to prevent themselves from being swept away by the terrible devouring power. This Old Toad and the others all changed their expressions. This aura was too overbearing, as if it could swallow the sky and the earth, devour everything, and seize the momentum of Zhou Su for its own use. Even for them, their bodies and minds could feel a sense of oppression assaulting them. At the same time, in the wooden house, Lin Sun's figure was flowing with Taoist light and turned into the image of the big abyss. His whole body was like a black hole rotating in the depths of Zhou Su, crazily devouring all the power from all directions. A heart-palpitating, overbearing, and disdainful aura spread out from his body. But soon, all this vision disappeared without a trace. Lin Sun stopped practicing and fell in a deep thought. These days, he had mastered the mystery of the infinite devouring scripture preliminarily, and there was only one feeling in his heart. This inheritance was overbearing and boundless. It regarded the power of heaven and earth as its prey and devoured it for its own use. My body is endless. My Tao is endless. And so is my Dharma. This was completely different from the great path furnace scripture that Lin Sun had exhausted all his cultivation to create. The great path furnace scripture could contain all kinds of Tao and develop all kinds of Dharma. It was just like an ocean, enough to make all kinds of streams return to their origin and not actively devour it. It was a kind of chi that could contain all ages and encompass the four seas. It had the charm of when my flower blossoms, fragrance wafts. But the infinite devouring scripture was different. The core meaning of this scripture lay in devouring, and it was a kind of overbearing invasion and plunder. As long as the power existed in the heavens, it could be devoured and refined into one's own power, thereby releasing a terrifying and boundless divine power. In terms of power in battle alone, the infinite devouring scripture was clearly superior. After all, this was a supreme inheritance that had accompanied the master of Tong Tian in his campaigns for countless years and had defeated many Emperor Realm giants in the heavens. As for the Great Path Furnace scripture, it was just a method that Lin Sun had created, a kind of foundation for cultivation. Its profound meaning hadn't been deduced to the extreme yet. However, in terms of structure and atmosphere, the Great Path Furnace scripture was superior. This technique relied on the word tolerance. Tolerance was great. The great Tao of the heavens, all types of methods, could be merged into a single furnace. Back then, when he crossed the void and headed towards Imperial Pass Great Wall, Elder Een had previously specially reminded Lin Sun not to reveal his own method. It was because this method had never existed since ancient times, too taboo and powerful. Even if he was targeted by an Emperor Realm old monster, they would still develop malicious intent. The most crucial thing was that Lin Sun understood extremely clearly that the Great Path Furnace Scripture's birth had previously encountered a strange and terrifying tribulation. On this point, it was something the infinite devouring Scripture couldn't compare to. To put it simply, the Great Path Furnace Scripture, when it was born, already possessed an unprecedented atmosphere. However, right now, it was only in its embryonic form, and it was limited to the Saint Realm, not possessing the Emperor Realm's profound mysteries. Meanwhile, the infinite devouring Scripture was a true, perfect, unmatched inheritance. Its power was terrifying, unrivaled. Moreover, the mysteries within touched upon many of the Emperor Realm's mysteries. This was a true emperor, Tao, precious scripture. Meanwhile, at this time, after realizing these differences, Lin Sun couldn't help but produce a bold idea. Since the great path furnace scripture could contain all Tao under the heavens, could he try to merge the infinite devouring scripture's profound mysteries within it? If this was the case, would the great path furnace scripture's power and charm undergo a world-shaking transformation? When he thought of this, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. He even had a powerful urge to give it a try, but in the end he endured it. Right now, the Great Path Furnace Scripture contained the Taishian Sword Scripture, Calamity Dragon 9 Transformations, Heavenly Origin Severing, Heaven Shaking 9 Strikes, Void Shattering Finger, and other inheritances mysteries. He hadn't even completely comprehended these things yet. If he tried to contain an unmatched inheritance like the infinite devouring scripture, he would clearly be overestimating himself. Moreover, his current comprehension of the infinite devouring scripture was only at the initial stage. There were still many mysteries he hadn't truly comprehended. At this time, it really wasn't easy to try and merge this inheritance into his own method. The Great Sage Realm is vast and boundless, which is somewhat similar to my Great Path Furnace Scripture. Perhaps it's not too late to try when I reach this realm. Lin Sun took a deep breath and finally abandoned the strong impulse in his heart. Big brother, are you going to finish your closed-door training? Outside the wooden house, the voice of old Toad rang. Almost at the same time, the big blackbird's anxious voice came. Boy, if you don't go to Sunset Tang Valley, I will really be tortured crazy. Lin Sun was speechless. He immediately stood up and pushed the door open. Before the closed-door training, he had said that he would go to Sunset Tang Valley when he finished his closed-door training. Now was almost the right time. Ha ha, boy, you finally came out. The big blackbird's eyes lit up with ecstasy. Now it's easy. Let's go and cut down the Fusong divine tree of those golden crows and let them know how powerful we are. Old Toad was a little worried. Big brother, can we really do it with our strength? Sunset Tang Valley is a sacred place. The bloodline of golden crows can survive from ancient times to the present. It's by no means easy to provoke them. Lin Sun looked calm and nodded. Don't worry, I already have a plan in mind. I don't care about other things. I only listen to Big Brother's decision. Alu strode over and grinned. In the distance, Silver and Tion also looked over from afar. These days, they had been waiting for Lin Sun's final decision. Seeing this, Lin Sun waved his hand happily. Let's go. There is no need to say any more nonsense, whether it was to save the spirit of insignificant Bao or to revenge. This time, Lin Sun was bound to go to Sunset Tang Valley. Apart from other things, Lin Sun had completely become enemies with the bloodline of golden crows in the absolute summit domain alone. On this day, Lin Sun and his companions, who had been silent for a long time, left Star Chest C and went to the territory of golden crows. Chapter 1708. Half a year had passed since the end of the Nine Regions battlefield. During this time, there was a great sensation in the ancient Desolation Realm, and many people were shocked by Lin Sun's achievements in the Nine Regions battlefield. The first in the Nine Regions battlefield. This title was as dazzling as the sun in the sky. Who in the ancient Desolation Realm didn't know Lin Sun's name? The winds and clouds of the world come from our generation, and he is the peak of our generation. This he was Lin Sun. Whether it was the orthodoxies that hated Lin Sun or the big forces that were afraid of Lin Sun, everyone knew that in the ancient Desolation Realm, Lin Sun's power was so strong that no one could suppress him. However, this didn't mean that those orthodoxies that hated Lin Sun would be afraid and lower their heads. After all, they were ancient forces with a long history. How could they lack the foundation to be fearless of a peerless saint? However, as long as they were not stupid, no big force dared to attack Lin Sun again. Lin Sun alone might not be worth too much fear, but there were already many terrifying forces standing behind him. For example, the Sun Moon Hall, the Origin Sect, the Xinwen Sword House, the Yi Clan of Crepe Myrtle Mountain, and so on. It was all because Lin Sun had defended the entire ancient Desolation realm in the Nine Regions battlefield and made friends with a large number of young peerless saints. Almost all of these young, peerless saints had a big force behind them. If Lin Sun was in trouble, how could those peers who had fought side by side with him in the Nine Regions battlefield remain indifferent? This was the most frightening thing for the orthodoxies in the ancient Desolation realm. Even because of this, many big forces that had been hostile to Lin Sun still had to worry about whether Lin Sun would take the initiative to retaliate. This was the influence. It was the power that Lin Sun had built up by fighting alone for many years. However, to the surprise of everyone in the ancient Desolation realm, in the 6 months after the Nine Regions battlefield came to an end, Lin Sun, such a dazzling figure in the world, seemed to have vanished in a thin air, and there was no news about him. Some people said that he was meditating in seclusion. Others said that he was very likely to have left the ancient Desolation realm and returned to the mortal world, because this kind of thing had happened before. Some people even said that Lin Sun knew that he was too strong and was easily envied by God, so he chose to hide his name and live in seclusion. This was, of course, absurd. However, there were also news that Lin Sun previously borrowed Divine Secret Pavilion's power to head to Imperial Pass Great Wall, turning that place upside down. However, when this news, which was close to the truth, spread to the ancient Desolation realm, most people thought it was absurd. The reason was extremely simple. Who didn't understand that Imperial Pass Great Wall was the world of half-emperor old monsters? Not to mention a peak true sage. Even if a king sage were to go, he would only be a side character, much less cause a huge ruckus. Sometimes, the truth and rumors were always so confusing. In short, half a year had passed, and the discussion about Lin Sun gradually calmed down. During this period of time, the big forces who had been worried about Lin Sun's revenge gradually forgot about these things. Against this background, Lin Sun and his team started their journey to Sunset Tang Valley. Sunset Tang Valley. It was the territory of the Golden Crows and one of the famous sacred retreat lands in the ancient Desolation realm. In the sky above a magnificent palace made of golden bricks, many small golden crows spread their wings and flew. Their feathers emitted streams of flames, making them look divine and extraordinary. In the palace, Wu Hongtian sat on the central seat, alone in a daze, a trace of disappointment between his brows. He was dressed in a golden robe, his hair was gray, and his face was haggard. He was the current clan leader of the Golden Crows, a terrifying character who had shaken the world for thousands of years. However, in recent years, Wu Hongtian rarely paid attention to clan affairs. Little 7, little 13, I will definitely avenge you in the future, Wu Hongtian murmured, a trace of grief on his face. An old servant beside him couldn't help but sigh when he saw this. Many years ago, in the absolute nightmare domain, the 7th Golden Crow Crown Prince Wu Lingdao and the 13th Crown Prince Wu Lingfei were both killed by Lin Sun. Who knew how many experts of the Golden Crow bloodline were slaughtered? Suffering the heavy blow of losing his son, every time the clan leader thought of this matter, he felt so much pain that he wanted to die. The old servant knew very well how much the clan leader wanted to kill Lin Sun, but he couldn't seize the opportunity, especially in the past 6 months. With the rise of Lin Sun as the #1 in the Nine Regions battlefield, his name shook the entire ancient Desolation. This was no less than a heavy blow to the Golden Crow bloodline. At this time, no matter how much they hated Lin Sun, the Golden Crow bloodline didn't dare to act rashly. Because of this, Wu Hongtian had never been in a good mood in the past 6 months. He would often be in a daze, immersed in a mixture of hatred and sorrow. His son was killed, but he couldn't avenge it. This was simply the cruelest torture. When the absolute nightmare domain ended, the priest Elder Wu Luqi attacked, but he was shot dead by this kid with 1 arrow. Outside Snow Mulberry City, all the saints gathered to besiege this kid. Priest Wu Xiaotong also participated, but all the saints were killed by this kid alone. The heavens mourned for 10 days, and the entire Snow Mulberry City was dyed red with blood. Now, This kid has already become an absolute true saint, and his reputation is like the sun in the sky. Which orthodoxy dares to deal with him? Wu Hongtian sat there in a daze, his expression uncertain. And as his father, how long do I have to wait to avenge little 7 and little 13? The old servant consoled. My condolences, patriarch. Wu Hongtian took a deep breath and stood up. His eyes were exquisite, and his aura was terrifying. There was no longer a trace of sorrow on his face. At this moment, he fully displayed the dignity of a patriarch. The old servant suddenly said, Patriarch, a while ago, there was news that Lin Sun appeared at the Great Wall of Imperial Pass, and even killed the #1 person there, Gu Yangxiu. Wu Hongtian was stunned at first, and then he couldn't help but laugh loudly. If this kid really has such ability, wouldn't the entire ancient desolation respect him? Such a ridiculous rumor. I wonder which idiot spread it. It's too ridiculous. As he spoke, he strode out of the palace. A divine tree stood towering in the sky, its branches strong and sturdy, and its entire body emitted a golden flame divine radiance, as if it was burning, illuminating the entire Sunset Valley. Fusang Divine Tree, a divine tree that had been famous since ancient times, born from the source of the Samadhi true fire. Its tree reached the sky, and its leaves burned like fire. It was rumored that the place where the sun set was on this Fusang Divine Tree. Fusang Divine Tree was the clan treasure of the Golden Crow bloodline. The core mystery of the Sun scripture cultivated by the descendants of the Golden Crow bloodline came from the Tao patterns of the Fusang Divine Tree. At the same time, the leaves and roots of the Fusang Divine Tree were all rare divine materials in the world, and they were of great help to the cultivation of the Golden Crow bloodline. At the same time, the Samadhi true fire could be extracted from the Fusang Divine Tree, which was one of the most domineering divine flames in the world. Since ancient times, the Fusang Divine Tree had become the forbidden area of the Golden Crow bloodline. Very few people knew that under this tree, there was a prison that was sealed by the power of countless divine restrictions. Very few people knew that an extremely ferocious existence was imprisoned in that prison. No matter what methods the ancestors of the Golden Crow bloodline used to attack, torture, and refine him, they were unable to kill him. In the prison, it was incomparably dark and deathly silent. Wu Hongtian came with a cold expression. He stood outside the Fusang Divine Tree and looked at the bottom of the Divine Tree. Valspawn, are you still waiting for that little bastard to come and save you? Unfortunately, he doesn't dare to come at all. I've been waiting here bitterly for half a year, and I still haven't seen that little bastard. He spoke, and his voice was transmitted into the dark prison that was sealed. Boom! Suddenly, a monstrous, ferocious aura surged out from the deathly, silent prison. It was as if a demonic god that had been silent for thousands of years had awakened at this moment. At this moment, the towering Fusang Divine Tree trembled violently. Golden light flowed, and divine flames surged. Vaguely, a figure sat up in the dark prison. His eyes were filled with endless ferociousness and hatred. But very soon he laughed loudly. As long as this kid doesn't die, he will definitely come. Wu Hongtian's expression was cold, and his heart moved. Whoosh streaks of golden whips, formed by the power of the restrictions, lashed down fiercely, causing the skin of the figure to split open. But he still laughed loudly, and his voice was filled with disdain and pleasure. Old bastard, when I get out of here, I will definitely return all the blood and hatred that has accumulated since the ancient times. At that time, the Sunset Tang Valley will be removed from the ancient desolation region. Pa, pa, pa. Every lash of the whips, formed by the power of the restrictions, was enough to make a sage suffer from bone-deep pain. But the figure was still laughing wildly. I will remember how many times you hit me. After I kill you little bastards, I will go to the starry ancient path and continue to settle the score with that old bastard Mo Wu. Mo Wu was the Demon Crow Emperor. He was the most outstanding and dazzling ancestor in the history of the Golden Crow bloodline, and he was seen as the greatest pride of the Golden Crow bloodline. But at the same time, The Demon Crow Emperor was also an enemy that the figure would not forget until he died. Wu Hongtian's expression became colder and colder, and even a little livid. Originally, he had come here to vent the emotions in his heart. However, the words spoken by that figure had caused him to become even more furious. However, when Wu Hongtian was about to continue to whip the figure, suddenly, an old servant hurriedly teleported to him from the void. Patriarch, Lin Sun has appeared. A cold light burst out of Wu Hongtian's eyes, and his breathing became a little rapid. Where is he? The little bastard who killed little 7 and little 13 finally appeared after half a year. This made him almost lose control of the long-suppressed hatred in his heart. Just outside our Sunset Tang Valley. The old servant answered quickly. Wu Hongtian was stunned, and his face suddenly changed slightly. He realized that something was wrong. Could it be that this little bastard is here to... Haha, he's here. He's finally here. I knew that this day was not far away, but I didn't expect that he would really come today. In the dark prison, the figure's maniacal laughter rang out. Chapter 1709. It was a huge canyon that was filled with a divine luster. The clouds in the sky were dyed a magnificent golden color. As far as the eye could see, only the Golden Canyon stood in the middle, which was quite spectacular. Sunset Tang Valley. In the distance, Lin Sun's black eyes were cold, and his expression was calm. Next to him, the big black bird was quickly introducing, there are a total of 36 heaven priests in the Golden Crow clan, and every one of them is a true sage. There are 12 divine elders, who have the combat strength of at least the great sage realm. For example, Wu Hongtian, the current patriarch of the Golden Crow branch, is a great sage. In addition, there are about 3,000 clansmen of the Golden Crow branch. It's not a large number, but each of them is a tough character. Of course, for us, the Flamen are of no value at all. The only thing we need to guard against is the divine elders. Compared to the other ancient orthodoxies in the ancient Desolation realm, the Golden Crow Bloodline's foundation is not inferior, or even better. And Sunset Tang Valley, which has existed since ancient times, is the nest of the Golden Crow branch. It's not an exaggeration to say that it's a dragon's pool and a tiger's den. If we go there rashly, it's very easy to encounter unexpected dangers. By the way, as the sacred place, these are only the visible forces of the Golden Crow branch. According to the rumors, even if there are no quasi-emperors in the Golden Crow branch, there should at least be terrifying existences at the Saint King level. Hearing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but look at the big black bird in surprise. You seem to know a lot about it. The big black bird said proudly, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. This time, I am sharpening my knife to cut down the Fusang Divine Tree and get some other treasures. How can I not try to find out the enemy's actual situation? Lin Sun also remembered that Mr. Shun once said that the quasi-emperors of the Golden Crow branch were now serving in the Great Wall of the Imperial Pass. But this didn't mean that there were no old monsters in the Sunset Tang Valley. At least, the Saint King level was destined to exist. And in the ancient Desolation domain, if there was a Saint King in an ancient orthodoxy, it was already a supreme existence, enough to deter the world. But now, Lin Sun didn't care about this. Alu rubbed his fists and asked, Big brother, should we make a sneak attack or wait for them to come out and kill them? Sneak attack. The big black bird immediately shook its head. There are many restrictions in the Sunset Soup Valley. It's impossible for us to sneak an attack. It's not good to wait here. We are here for revenge. Wouldn't it be too embarrassing if we don't chop down the Fusang Divine Tree? This thieving bird was only thinking about the propping mulberry tree. Then what do you think we should do? Alu glared at him. The big black bird rolled its eyes and glanced at Lin Sun. Boy, I'm asking you. It was also curious why Lin Sun dared to be so fearless. It should be known that even the King of Sages had to weigh the consequences if he wanted to deal with the Golden Crow branch. What should we do? Of course, we'll pay them a visit first, Lin Sun said with a smile. As they conversed, they'd already arrived a few kilometers away from Sunset Tang Valley, In the distance was an enormous entrance to the gorge that was suffused with dazzling golden light, causing it to emanate a divine aura. "What are you doing here?" Suddenly, a golden crow descended from the sky, and it transformed into a thin young man with an arrogant expression and an icy, cold gaze. "If you're here to visit, take out your name card. If you don't have one, then disappear immediately. This is not a place where you can come and go at will." At the same time, numerous figures appeared in the vicinity of the gorge, and all of them gazed at this group of uninvited guests. "Lin Sun is here to pay a visit to the Golden Crow Branch." Lin Sun's voice was not loud, but it resounded clearly in everyone's heart and spread into the Sunset Tang Valley. "What? You're Lin Sun? Oh no, this guy is here for revenge. No, this is the territory of our Golden Crow Branch. If he comes for revenge, what's the difference between courting death?" There was a commotion in the field. The overmatches of the Golden Crow Branch were stunned, and their expressions changed. Lin Sun, the most powerful man in the Nine Regions battlefield, was the most dazzling sage in the ancient Desolation realm. But no one had expected that after disappearing for half a year, Lin Sun would appear in front of the nest of the Golden Crow Branch. For a moment, everyone looked at Lin Sun with surprise, hatred, and fear. Lin Sun didn't bother to pay attention to them. He just stood there in silence and blocked the Sunset Tang Valley in a dignified manner. Is he going to destroy this place with a dignified army? The big black bird's eyes widened in disbelief. Since when did this kid dare to be so arrogant that he didn't even care about the Golden Crow Branch, an ancient clan of the Sacred Retreat Place? "Let's use peaceful means before resorting to force. I'm going to test the depth of the Golden Crow Branch," Lin Sun said casually. After all, the Sunset Tang Valley had once produced a true Emperor Realm cultivator. How could it not have left behind a backup plan? Soon, figures with terrifying auras swept out from the huge Golden Gorge. There were old and young, men and women. Their leader was Wu Hengtian. Wu Hengtian's heart tightened when he heard that Lin Sun had come. He thought that Lin Sun had found a powerful backer to be so bold. Who would have thought that when they arrived, they would see such a scene? Lin Sun, the old toad, elude the big blackbird, a few people, and a bird stood there in a dignified manner. There was no one else except them. Standing near Wu Hengtian were the higher-ups of the Golden Crow Branch. When they saw this scene, they couldn't help but be stunned. Was Lin Sun crazy? How dare he come and provoke them like this? Aha, interesting. This is too interesting. The biggest enemy of the Golden Crow bloodline, a mere true sage, dares to come to us. Is he tired of living, or does he think that the Golden Crow bloodline is a pushover? Wu Hengtian laughed, but he didn't hide his murderous intent. He hadn't even sought revenge on this kid, but this kid had come to his door. This made him feel that even the heavens were helping him. The others also sneered. This was indeed ridiculous. This was the Sunset Tang Valley, the nest of the Golden Crow Branch. How dare Lin Sun and the others appear like this? Was he fearless? Or did he not know the immensity of heaven and earth? In the face of these cold and mocking gazes, Lin Sun's expression was calm. He only stretched out a finger and said indifferently, "I only came here for one thing. If you know what's good for you, hand over Senior Tian Ke, who has been suppressed by you for countless years. Otherwise, bear the consequences." His words caused an uproar. The Golden Crow powerhouses felt as if they had heard it wrong. Now, he actually dared to threaten their clan? Who did he think he was? A great emperor? Even a quasi-emperor wouldn't dare to be so presumptuous. However, he, an absolute true sage, had said such a thing. This gave others a feeling that it was ridiculous and ridiculous. Some people couldn't help but ask, who is Tian Ke? He's the evil creature that was suppressed under the Fusong Divine Tree. He was suppressed by our ancestor, the Dark Crow Great Emperor. This kid is obviously here to save this evil creature. He doesn't come with good intentions. Someone explained quickly. Wu Hengtian's expression was extremely cold. His eyes locked on Lin Sun like a sharp knife. "Little bastard, I haven't taken revenge on you yet, but you came to provoke me. Don't you know how to write the word death? So what if you're a true saint? You're still not worth mentioning in front of the Golden Crow Branch. The crowd of Golden Crow powerhouses agreed with him. True St. Jushio was indeed terrifying. But if he wanted to provoke the Golden Crow branch with such strength, it was no different from courting death. Big brother, it seems that these bastards are looking down on us. Alu's eyes were full of killing intent. He couldn't help but want to fight. This only proves that they are ignorant. But these old things aren't stupid at all. It's obvious that they can't see through us. That's why they don't dare to act rashly. Otherwise, do you think these old things would still talk so much nonsense? Old Toad grinned. That's right. These crows only know how to make noise. Alu also grinned, his face full of sarcasm. After experiencing the storms in the 9 regions battlefield, why would they care about such a scene? As long as Lin Sun was here, they wouldn't be afraid, even if they had to fight with the Emperor. For a moment, the faces of Wu Hongtian and the other big shots of the Golden Crow branch darkened. They indeed couldn't see through Lin Sun, which was why they didn't act immediately. Even though they despised Lin Sun on the surface, they didn't dare to underestimate him in their hearts. After all, he was a ruthless character who killed his way to the top with his own strength. He was known as the #1 cultivator in the 9 regions battlefield. How could he be a reckless person? Since he dared to come here so openly, he might have something to rely on. That was why Wu Hongtian and the others didn't act immediately. If it was any other cultivator who dared to provoke them in front of their nest, they would have been swatted to death like a fly. At this moment, Lin Sun sighed. It seems that we can only use force this time. I'm afraid it's far from enough. Wu Hongtian snorted coldly. He was already on the verge of exploding. His whole body was full of killing intent. The other old monsters also looked unfriendly. The atmosphere was oppressive. Seeing this, Lin Sun smiled and was about to act. At this moment, a heroic laughter came from afar. Breeze Valley, laughing at the heavens, is here. Boom! A majestic figure broke through the air and landed on the ground. An ostentatious and frightening aura also spread out along with it. This man carried a long saber on his shoulder, unruly and unruly. It was laughing at the heavens. Wu Hongtian and the others narrowed their eyes. Perhaps very few people in the world knew the name of the cool Breeze Valley. However, almost all of the old monsters who had stepped into the Saint State knew that this was a mysterious and frightening place to hide. At least in terms of foundation, it was not inferior to the Golden Crow branch at all. Was this what Lin Sun was relying on? Wu Hongtian and the others sneered in their hearts. Only one person from Breeze Valley wanted to wrestle with the Golden Crow branch, overestimating himself. However, the next moment, a voice sounded again, with a kind of sharp, murderous spirit like the cry of a sword. Thanks to friend of the book 469618842, Shungling Ghost, Wishing Bottle, friend of the book 44196713, and other children's shoes. Chapter 1711. How can I, Yi Chun, be absent from such a grand event? Yi Chun, clad in a purple robe and carrying a long sword on his back, appeared. His purple hair fluttered in the wind. His face was full of sharpness. The young master of Crepe Myrtle Mountain. Many Golden Crow cultivators' expressions changed again. A long time ago, the Yi clan of Crepe Myrtle had produced a world-shaking emperor who was called Sword Emperor of Crepe Myrtle. In terms of prestige, he was even better than the Dark Demon Emperor. A descendant of the Breeze Valley might not be worth paying too much attention to, but with the addition of Crepe Myrtle Mountain that was not inferior to the Breeze Valley, the situation was different. Most importantly, Yi Chun and Laughing at the Heavens were not ordinary juniors. They were peerless sages who were famous throughout the ancient Desolation Realm. Who dared to underestimate them? In the entire ancient Desolation Realm, there were only dozens of peerless true sages in the 9 regions battlefield. When Yi Chun and Laughing at the Heavens returned to the ancient Desolation Realm, they might not be as famous as Lin Sun, but ordinary true sages had to lower their heads in front of them to show respect. Not to mention that they had the support of the 2 ancient forces, the Breeze Valley and Crepe Myrtle Mountain. Who wouldn't be afraid of them? Lin Sun was slightly startled. He hadn't told anyone about his trip, but Old Toad grinned and said, "Big brother, while you were in seclusion, Alu and I were bored, so we casually mentioned it to our old friends. Lin Sun finally understood and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But he also knew that Old Toad and Alu must have done this because they were worried about him. Are you going to go against the Golden Crow clan? Can you bear the consequences? Wu Hongtian shouted with a gloomy face. So what if we are? Laughing at the heavens sneered. No matter how serious the consequences are, it's nothing compared to fighting side by side with our brothers. Yuchen said lazily. Their attitude caused the faces of the Golden Crow clan's experts to darken even more. An old monster said coldly, "They're just two juniors who don't know their place. We'll just capture them later and teach them a lesson on behalf of their elders, so that they won't meddle in things they shouldn't meddle in the future." Wu Hongtian took a deep breath and said, "That's all we can do." Really? Laughing at the heavens, and yet Chun had strange expressions on their faces. Whoosh! At this moment, there was a ripple in the air. Mi Hung, who was dressed in a jade robe and had a broad forehead and a determined expression, appeared. With clear eyebrows, he nodded slightly to Lin Sun. Then he looked at Sunset Tang Valley in the distance and introduced himself. Sun Moon Shrine's Mi Hungjin is here to teach you. Soon after, Yi Mok, who was dressed in a black robe with wide sleeves and had sharp, narrow eyes, also appeared on the scene. He glanced around and said with a smile, "Fortunately, I'm not too late." Then, with his hands clasped behind his back, he stood side by side with Lin Sun and said calmly, "I, Yi Moha of the Origin Sect, swear to go in and out with you today." At this moment, the atmosphere in the surroundings became oppressive, deathly silent, and perfectly silent. The group of Golden Crows stared at Nyetian, their expressions changing rapidly. Some juniors of the Golden Crow clan were dumbfounded. In an instant, the most outstanding saints of the ancient orthodoxies came one after another to fight side by side with Lin Sun. Who dared to believe it? What a group of arrogant juniors. Do you really think our Golden Crow clan is easy to bully? Wu Hongtian's face was livid with anger. He never thought that such an incredible thing would happen. Was this what Lin Sun was relying on? But if Lin Sun thought that he could make Wu Hongtian bow his head and let Tian Ke go under pressure, then it would be a big mistake. The Golden Crow clan had existed since the primeval age, and they'd experienced countless dangers, but they'd never been afraid. Did a group of top saints want to turn the world upside down? Wishful thinking. Today, we will bully you. So what? Tell me, do you want to do it yourself, or do you want us to do it? Alu shouted. Don't worry, wait for me. Whoosh! A dazzling sword chi cut through the sky and turned into Yu Jiaming, who suddenly landed on the ground. Brother Lin, we finally meet again. Yu Jiaming cupped his hands. Lin Sun nodded and said with emotion, I didn't expect that you would come. If I didn't come, I would regret it for the rest of my life. Yu Jiaming showed his snow-white teeth and laughed heartily. It's so lively. Brother Lin, if there is such a grand event next time, you must inform me as soon as possible. Look, many people came before me. In a clear and melodious voice, Ji Xingyao, dressed in white, floated over. She was as beautiful as an immortal and had a peerless appearance. There was a trace of complaint in her tone, which made Lin Sun smile bitterly and touch his nose. This time, he didn't intend to tell anyone. Miss G is right. I also hate to be late than others. Boom! A golden rainbow circled the ground, causing the earth to tremble. The golden light spilled out and reflected a dignified and strong figure. His whole body was golden and emitted a terrible and violent aura. It was Yuan Fatian, a descendant of Yu Yang. Monkey, you're also here? Alu was surprised. Yuan Fatian said coldly, Why can't I come? Alu said, Then the little golden-winged rock is also here. Yes. What answered him was a proud and aloof voice. A strong wind blew in the sky, and a golden-winged rock suddenly arrived. Its wings were like clouds in the sky, flowing with golden light and boundless divine power. Suddenly, he transformed into a young man with an ordinary appearance, and only his eyes were golden and blazing like the scorching sun. The little golden-winged rock. In the distance, all the people of the Golden Crow bloodline were stunned. They felt that their eyes were blurred, and their expressions changed countless times. In the past, it was difficult to see a peerless sage. But now, the most famous peerless sages in the ancient Desolation realm had come one after another. Who wouldn't be shocked and trembling? What shocked Wu Hengtian and the others the most was that these peerless sages had all come for Lin Sun. For Lin Sun, these young figures dared to shed all pretenses of cordiality with the Golden Crow bloodline. Patriarch, what should we do? It's a bit tricky. An old monster sent a voice transmission worriedly. Looking at the peerless sages who came to support Lin Sun, which one of them didn't have a terrifying ancient force behind them? Which one of them wasn't a peerless figure in the true sage realm? This is the territory of the Golden Crow bloodline. They deserve to die for daring to come here. Wu Hengtian gritted his teeth and said coldly, "Today, if the Golden Crow bloodline bowed to a group of juniors, they would definitely become the laughingstock of the ancient Desolation realm." He took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Lin Sun, is this all you have? Do you have more?" His voice was like thunder. Yes. What answered him was a sonorous voice that sounded like swords clashing. A mighty young man bathed in divine flames tore through the void and arrived with an unbridled aura. It was Qi Lingxiao. Wu Hengtian's face darkened. The powerhouses of the Golden Crow bloodline were speechless, and their expressions were unsettled. When had the Golden Crow bloodline ever been treated like this? Without a doubt, the current situation was terrible, and Wu Hengtian and the others were caught unprepared. No matter how angry they were, they didn't dare to act rashly. They couldn't help but be fearful of this situation. However, just when they thought it was all over, there was another fluctuation in the void nearby. Looks like we're not too late. That's for the best. It feels like we're back in the 9 regions battlefield. How great it was when we fought side by side. Amidst the chatter, a man and a woman walked out of the scene. The man was tall and imposing, and the woman was beautiful and slender, like a fairy walking out of the rosy clouds. They were Emperor Xiaohao and Ruo Wu. For a moment, Wu Hengtian was dumbfounded. As for the other powerhouses of the Golden Crow bloodline, they were also silent, their minds numb. Was this the power of Lin Sun, the #1 cultivator in the 9 regions battlefield? In the distance, Lin Sun, Old Toad, Alu, the big blackbird, laughing at the heavens, Yechen, Yu Jiaming, Mi Hengzhen, Yimo. A group of peerless sages stood side by side. Each of them could be called a peerless genius, and they were as elegant as the brightest stars in the sky. Now, they were all gathered around Lin Sun. Such a scene was enough to be recorded in the history of the ancient Desolation realm and become a story that would be talked about by future generations. After all, it was bound to be very, very difficult to gather these most brilliant young people who represented the best path of cultivation in the ancient Desolation realm. At this moment, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel a surge of blood and pride. Lin Sun had fought alone until now. Although he had made countless enemies, he also had a group of friends who treated him with sincerity. Now, they came one after another and chose to fight side by side with him again. Old Toad, Alu, and the others were also excited at this moment. In a trance, they recalled the bloody fighting days in the 9 regions battlefield. At that time, they laughed and talked about drinking the enemy's blood and killing to their heart's content. But now, their opponents had changed to the Golden Crow bloodline. In front of the Sunset Valley, the atmosphere became more and more oppressive. The expressions of all the experts of the Sun Crow clan were extremely gloomy and unsightly to the extreme. Such a scene caused them to feel that it was extremely difficult to deal with, and they had the feeling that they were in a dilemma and had no way to stop. Forget it. Suddenly, Wu Hengtian let out a long sigh. Even if we don't care about the monks, we should care about the Buddha. You juniors all come from different forces. Although my Golden Crow bloodline is not afraid of you, as fellow cultivators of the ancient Desolation region, we can't be too ruthless. The powerhouses of the Golden Crow bloodline were all stunned. Did the Patriarch change his mind? Lin Sun and the others looked on coldly. No one believed that an old monster like Wu Hengtian would bow his head so easily. Sure enough, The next moment, Wu Hengtian said, "In order to avoid hurting the innocent, I can give you a chance to take Tianke away. The premise is that you have to fight with the powerhouses of the Golden Crow bloodline for 3 rounds. If you win all 3 rounds, I will fulfill your wish and let you take Tianke away." After a pause, a glint of killing intent appeared in his eyes. He looked directly at Lin Sun and said, "If you lose 1 round, haha, I'm afraid you will lose your life here, not to mention taking Tianke away." Chapter 17:12. Old Toad and Alu couldn't help frowning as soon as he finished. What a shameless old thing. Realizing that the situation was not right, he came up with another plan and only targeted Lin Sun. It seemed like he was taking a step back, but in fact, he wanted to kill Lin Sun at the lowest cost. The eyes of the Golden Crows lit up when they heard this. "Lin Sun, do you agree?" Wu Hengtian asked in a low voice. Before Lin Sun could speak, Alu couldn't help cursing, "Old thing, you're the patriarch of the Golden Crows. Don't you feel shameless?" Old Toad asked straightforwardly, "Big brother, as long as you say the word, we brothers will kill our way into the Golden Crows with you. There's no need to pay attention to this old bastard." Xiao Hao and Yecha nodded. "Kill our way in? You're too arrogant. Even if you're an emperor-to-be, you have to consider the consequences of breaking into my Sunset Tang Valley." Wu Hengtian's expression was cold. "If it weren't for the power behind you, do you really think I would make such a concession?" Old Toad wanted to say something, but was stopped by Lin Sun. Lin Sun looked at Wu Hengtian coldly and said, "You'll hand over Senior Tianke if we win all 3 battles?" Wu Hengtian answered without hesitation, "Yes. But remember, you have to fight alone, and you have to die." Old Toad and the others frowned even more. This old bastard wasn't making a concession. He was clearly planning to kill Lin Sun. But Lin Sun looked very calm and said, "What if you go back on your word?" Wu Hengtian couldn't help laughing. "Little thing, you underestimate me too much. Everyone here can bear witness to what happens today." "Lin Sun, are you really going to agree?" Xiao Hao frowned and asked. "The Golden Crows have been fierce for a long time. They won't care about face in the 3 battles. In order to kill you, they'll probably send out some Saint Kings." "It's okay. I know what I'm doing." Lin Sun smiled. "But what if they go back on their word?" Xiao Hao was still worried. Lin Sun said calmly, "It doesn't matter. Brother Xiao Hao, you don't think I'm here just to save people, do you?" Xiao Hao was shocked. A bold idea came to his mind, and he looked at Lin Sun in a different way. Where did this guy get his confidence from? "I agree. Let's begin." Lin Sun didn't want to talk nonsense. He rose into the air and stood in the void. His figure was lonely, and his eyebrows were calm. If he could rescue Tianke, that would be even better. It didn't matter if the other party went back on his word. Wu Hengtian couldn't help but be stunned. He didn't think that Lin Sun would agree so readily. Not only him, even the other powerful warriors of the Golden Crow clan were slightly stunned. Is this kid really fearless, or is he acting recklessly? If he didn't have the help of those peerless sages from the major forces, how could he rely on these 3 battles to save people? What wishful thinking. After that, Wu Hengtian couldn't help but reveal a cold smile. He waved his hand and said, "Hung Hai, go deal with this brat. Remember, don't show any mercy." A robust man with hair that was like a halberd and a fierce and dignified bearing walked out. His eyes were terrifying like surging lightning. From afar, he was like a towering mountain, unattainable and unshakable. Wu Heng-hai, a great sage and one of the holy elders of the Golden Crow clan, had a high status and was extremely famous in the ancient Desolation realm. He was known as the first butcher of the Great Sage realm in the past 800 years. This person's battle prowess might not be the strongest among the Great Sage realm experts in the world. However, the number of opponents who had died at his hands was so many that no one would dare to claim to be the strongest among the Great Sage realm experts. This was the origin of the name Butcher. Yet Chun, Mi Hongjin, and others couldn't help but narrow their eyes, and a touch of anger appeared between their eyebrows. Wu Hengtian, you are too shameless. You sent a great sage whose hands are stained with blood to deal with a young man of the true sage realm. Don't you have any shame? Yimo shouted. Wu Hongtian smiled leisurely and said, "There is no restriction on the level of cultivation in this battle. If you think that Lin Sun is not a match for him, you can ask him to admit defeat and kill himself." The patriarch of an ancient clan, the master of the Sunset Tang Valley in the Saint Hermit Land, said such shameless words. Yimo and the others couldn't help but widen their horizons. "I've never seen such a shameless person." The big blackbird was angry. It thought that it was shameless enough, but compared to Wu Hongtian, it was nothing. Even the powerhouses of the Golden Crow clan felt uncomfortable. It seemed that even they didn't expect the patriarch to send such a terrifying existence like Wu Honghai in the first battle. It was obvious that he wanted to kill Lin Sun as soon as possible with an absolute attitude. Of course, this arrangement was indeed a little dishonorable, but as long as they could kill Lin Sun, it wasn't a bad thing. Unexpectedly, Lin Sun was still very calm despite being treated like this. He only uttered 4 words lightly. "Come up and fight." His words shook the universe and drowned out all the voices in the field. Old Toad, Alu, and the others wanted to say something, but stopped on second thought. They knew that Lin Sun had made up his mind, so they couldn't help but worry. An ordinary great saint was indeed not qualified to be taken seriously by a true Saint Ju Xiao. But Wu Honghai wasn't an ordinary great saint. Even if he hadn't embarked on the path of Ju Xiao, he had already firmly suppressed Lin Sun in terms of realm. This also meant that the first battle was destined to be very unfair before it even began. But it was too late for the crowd to dissuade him because Lin Sun had already made his decision. "If you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish." Wu Honghai stepped into the void, and the void cracked under his feet. His figure was like an infinitely tall mountain, becoming more and more majestic. This was a kind of greatness in momentum. This was a kind of power that belonged to the great saint realm. If it was any other true saint here, they would only feel a sense of helplessness like an insignificant ant. Not to mention fighting, even their fighting spirit would be shaken. Rumble. The clouds in all directions collapsed, and the sky darkened. Wu Honghai's body was surrounded by blazing golden divine flames, and his aura was so strong that it covered the sky and covered the earth, causing many people in the field to hold their breath. This was the real power of a great saint. It was vast and immeasurable, like a curtain covering the sky, and mountains, rivers, and all things seemed extremely small in front of it. However, all this couldn't affect Lin Sun's mind. He had already comprehended the mystery of greatness, and even had a deeper understanding of greatness than some strong people who had stepped into the great saint realm. The reason why he hadn't stepped into the great saint realm was that he lacked an opportunity. The atmosphere was oppressive, and the air seemed to be condensed. The chilling atmosphere changed the color of the world. In the field, all eyes were nervously watching. This was an unfair duel, and it was also a battle that was rarely seen throughout the ages. One was the number 1 person in the 9 regions battlefield, a peerless figure who had become a true saint at the great saint realm. And the other was Wu Honghai, who was named the first butcher of the great saint realm in 800 years. Looking at the entire ancient desolation realm, this could be called shocking battle. Lin Sun's clothes were fluttering, and his black eyes were cold. The terrifying power in his body, like lava, had long been running. Die! Without any nonsense, Wu Honghai attacked without hesitation. As he waved his hand, it was as if he had picked up a fierce burning sun. He looked like an ancient god of death, and his momentum was violent and had the power to incinerate the universe. So strong, Xiao Hao and the others all narrowed their eyes. They could tell with one strike that Wu Honghai was a top figure even in the great saint realm. He was extremely terrifying. Wu Hongtian couldn't help but reveal a hint of admiration. He could tell that Wu Honghai didn't underestimate or hold back. Instead, Wu Hongtian did as Wu Honghai had instructed, intending to kill Lin Sun with a thunderous force. Many strong people of the Golden Crow bloodline were also shocked. In the ancient Desolation realm, it was extremely rare to see a battle between great saints. Even though they were of the same clan, most of them had never seen Wu Honghai's means, so they were shocked at first sight. Boom! In the face of this attack, a big abyss suddenly appeared around Lin's sun, swallowing the sky and the earth, covering all directions. The void suddenly exploded, and the power of the nearby Zhou Su was drawn and swallowed, turning the place where Lin Sun stood into a black hole. When Wu Honghai's palm slammed down, the palm energy that was as dazzling as the sun suddenly exploded along with a deafening roar of collision. It turned into a rolling rain of fire and light, and was devoured by the abyss around Lin Sun until not a single drop was left. Boundless devouring scripture. The supreme Taoist scripture that the master of Tong Tian relied on to dominate the heavens and conquer the Zhou Su. It was an ancient supreme skill that was based on the big abyss devouring the sky. At this moment, in front of Sunset Tang Valley, a terrifying and boundless power burst out. This, Xiao Hao and the others were all shocked. They hadn't seen Lin Sun for half a year, and he was much stronger than they had expected. It was like he was a completely different person. Wu Hongtian's expression changed slightly. How could the absolute power of the true Saint Realm be so heaven-defying? One should know that Wu Honghai didn't hold back and used the true power of the great Saint Realm, but he was still defeated like a piece of paper. As for the powerhouses of the Golden Crow branch, their eyeballs almost fell out. They had long heard that Lin Sun's combat power was heaven-defying, like a peerless monster. Today, they realized that this guy was even stronger than the rumors said. It was simply beyond their imagination. Kill. Wu Honghai's expression also changed slightly, but he was experienced in killing. Without hesitation, he pressed his palm again. Buzz. In an instant, thousands of suns rose into the sky, wanting to burn the heaven and earth. The nearby mountains and rivers instantly evaporated, turning into ashes and disappearing. The void was melted and full of holes. The supreme inheritance of the Golden Crow branch, thousand suns, burning sky. At this moment, Lin Sun moved like a big abyss moving horizontally. The heaven and earth twisted and collapsed with his steps, producing a terrible explosion. That domineering and boundless power was like the god of destruction coming out. In the blink of an eye, thousands of suns exploded in front of Lin Sun one by one. The power contained in each of the suns was enough to kill any true saint. But in front of Lin Sun, they were like broken bubbles. They looked so weak and fragile. For a moment, the suns between heaven and earth exploded, and the roar was endless. The blazing torrent of flames raged, showing a shocking scene. And Lin Sun was like a black hole in the painting, swallowing all the divine flame turbulence along the way. Chapter 17:14. Rumble. Heaven and earth trembled as the surging torrent of flames was swallowed by Lin Sun, who was moving through the void like a black hole. Exclamations rang out incessantly. Many people's expressions changed. What kind of terrifying Taoist technique was this? It was too domineering. Ridiculous. Isn't he afraid of exploding with such a technique? In the void, Wu Honghai's expression changed. Then he sneered and charged forward with all his might. Flames surged all over his body as if he wanted to burn the sky. Golden divine flames turned into palm force and fist prints that crushed forward. But no matter how he attacked, they were all swallowed by the abyss around Lin Sun. From afar, Lin Sun's figure was like a bottomless pit. Such a shocking scene left Old Toad, Lu, and the others dumbfounded. They had seen Lin Sun use the star engulfing way before, but it was a furnace that contained tens of thousands of Taoists and developed tens of thousands of techniques. It was upright and had the power to suppress the past and present. But now, Lin Sun was completely domineering. No matter how many techniques he used, you couldn't escape the fate of being crushed, plundered, and devoured. The abyss blotted out the sky and swallowed everything. Wu Hongtian's expression was uncertain as he transmitted his voice. Do you know what kind of inheritance this is? How can it be so domineering? The higher-ups of the Golden Crow branch nearby were silent. They were also trembling because they couldn't tell the origin of such a technique. But there was no doubt that such an inheritance was extremely terrifying. Wu Honghai was a great saint, a ruthless character like a butcher. A casual attack was enough to kill a true saint. But now, all his attacks were devoured. This was too unbelievable. Who wouldn't be shocked? Suddenly, Wu Honghai let out a roar. I'd like to see how long you can last after devouring so much energy. His expression was cold. His body circulated with monstrous divine flames as he performed the Golden Crow's unique technique. Sky burning ember. In an instant, an endless rain of flames fell like comets from the ninth heaven. It was dazzling and blazing, burning fiercely and covering the sky. Every wisp of flame had the power to burn mountains and boil seas. Everyone in the field was horrified. The full power of a great saint was undoubtedly displayed at this moment. Rumble. But as Lin Sun moved his body, the sky collapsed and was swallowed by the black hole. The boundless rain of fire was also swept away with a rumble. Looking at Lin Sun again, he was unscathed, but his breath was more terrifying than before, like an ancient wild beast that had eaten its fill, giving off an overbearing aura that could devour the ages. Wu Honghai's eyes widened, and he almost couldn't believe his eyes. Was this really the power that a true Saint Realm expert could possess? Could there really be a boundless black hole within this kid's body? If it was any other cultivator that dared to forcefully seize another's attack, that cultivator would have probably been instantly blasted into bits a long time ago. But Lin Sun, safe and sound. At this moment, it wasn't just Wu Honghai. All the experts of the Golden Crow bloodline were stunned. Their bodies and minds trembled in disbelief. Continue. Lin Sun seemed to want to continue as he stared at Wu Honghai with deep eyes. Within his body, all of the attacks that he had devoured earlier had turned into a boiling power that surged violently within the abyss created by the great endless devouring scripture. That feeling was indescribably wonderful. It seemed as if the abyss was boundless, and it could devour all the energy in the universe. This was the Tao left behind by the Master of Skirich. Devour the heavens and devour the earth. Seize the momentum of the universe and use it for myself. My body is immeasurable, and my techniques are boundless. It was precisely this cultivation that allowed the Master of Skirich to sweep through the 9 heavens and defeat an unknown number of Emperor Realm experts. Now, Lin Sun could only be considered to have touched the threshold. Otherwise, he could instantly tear Wu Honghai, a great saint, apart and devour him with a single thought. Die! Wu Honghai was furious, and he couldn't keep his face any longer. He let out a shrill howl. In a flash, he displayed his trump card. Rumble. An enormous golden crow Dharma idol that was tens of thousands of meters long appeared behind Wu Honghai, causing its might to be much stronger than before. He attacked once more without holding back. However, it was destined to be in vain. In merely a moment, his expression had become extremely ugly and solemn, because no matter how strong his strength was and how powerful his momentum was, he couldn't shake Lin Sun in the slightest. Instead, Lin Sun operated the abyss and devoured all of his attacks. That unparalleled and domineering attitude caused the scene to fall into a deathly silence. Countless people were dumbfounded and gasped. Was he still human? This is impossible. Wu Honghai roared. His eyes were about to split open, and he found it difficult to accept. Since he started cultivating, he had never encountered such a setback, and it made him feel cold. Do you know what is called the absolute peak? Lin Sun finally started to take the initiative. He stepped forward in the void, and his aura was terrifying like the abyss, causing the heavens and the earth to tremble. Wu Honghai's expression was gloomy. Even true Saint Zhu Xiu can't have such means. Then do you know what is called creating an invincible technique at the absolute peak? Lin Sun was calm, and with every step he took, the aura around him rose steadily. It seemed to be slow, but in fact, all of his essence, qi, and spirit had already enveloped the surroundings and firmly locked onto Wu Honghai, creating an invincible technique at the absolute peak. Wu Honghai was stunned. Although he was a great saint, he had never come into contact with the path of the absolute peak, let alone know the secrets of the invincible technique. You don't know anything, and yet you're shouting. Don't you think that you're very stupid and ignorant? Lin Sun's voice was cold, and it carried undisguised mockery. There are some things that he didn't say that involve some of his own secrets. Otherwise, it would only bring more damage to Wu Honghai. Even so, his 3 questions had already made Wu Honghai feel humiliated. He was almost unable to keep his face after being taught a lesson by a junior. You're courting death. Blue veins popped on Wu Honghai's forehead. He let out a roar and charged at Lin Sun with all his might. It wasn't that he was flustered and exasperated, but as Lin Sun approached, he felt a suffocating pressure, as if there was nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. Under such pressure, the only thing he could do was to take the initiative to attack and disintegrate Lin Sun's continuously rising power. Bang! At this moment, Lin Sun made his move. He pressed out a finger. Boom! The power of the abyss, which had already devoured an unknown amount of power, was all gathered in this finger and suddenly exploded. It was impossible to describe the terror of this finger. Wherever the finger passed, the sky fell, the earth cracked, and the void shattered. Everything showed signs of annihilation. Wu Honghai, who was charging at Lin Sun, was pierced through by the finger. Then his head, neck, limbs, and torso exploded inch by inch. Blood and bones were all annihilated by the terrifying finger force. From afar, it gave people the feeling that Lin Sun had erased a terrifying figure of the great saint realm, like Wu Honghai from the world, with a single finger. His body and soul were destroyed, and his soul scattered. Rumble, the finger force crushed the void for 90,000 feet before disappearing. The 90,000 feet of the void was a scene of annihilation. Dead silence. Old Toad, Alu, Xiao Hao, and the others all widened their eyes. They were shocked by the power of this blow, and their scalps went numb. This kind of power was so overbearing that it was appalling. Wu Hongtian and the other experts of the Golden Crow lineage trembled as they cried out involuntarily in shock. How is this possible? No, how could he be so powerful? Wu Honghai, the holy elder of the Golden Crows, the first butcher of the great saint realm in the past 800 years, had an extremely high status in the clan. At first, before the battle, they all thought that the arrangement of the patriarch was a bully. They thought that it was not worth the trouble to deal with a top true saint like Wu Honghai. But who would have thought that Wu Honghai would be obliterated in just one finger? How could these powerful warriors of the Golden Crow clan accept such a bloody scene that had suddenly happened? There was an uproar in the field, and everyone looked at Lin Sun in a different way. This guy crossed a great realm and killed a great saint with one finger. Even in the long history of the ancient Desolation realm, such an earth-shattering thing had rarely happened. Wu Hongtian, I won the first round, Lin Sun said indifferently in the void. At the same time, he was experiencing the battle just now, and finally realized how terrifying the infinite devouring scripture was when used in battle. Umph! Wu Hongtian snorted coldly, his face livid, and his eyes full of deep-seated hatred. Lin Sun's victory also caught him off guard, especially when Wu Honghai was killed. It was like a stick hitting his head, and Wu Hongtian was stunned. At this moment, he suddenly took a few deep breaths and said, "Little bastard, don't be complacent too early. There are still 2 more battles. Cut the crap, just bring it on." Lin Sun put his hands behind his back, his expression calm. "Go and call Elder Jiu here," Wu Hongtian shouted. There was a commotion among the Golden Crows. Elder Jiu Hongjin, in existence at the consummation of the Great Saint Realm, had been in seclusion for the past 1,000 years, concentrating on breaking through to the King Saint Realm. Among the 13 Saint Elders of the Golden Crows, Wu Hongjin was undoubtedly the strongest. Even Wu Hongtian, the Patriarch, was not as powerful as Wu Hongjin. If it wasn't for Lin Sun's overwhelming strength, Wu Hongtian would not have disturbed Wu Hongjin, because the latter was at the critical moment of breaking through to the King's Saint Realm. Big brother. Suddenly, there was a ripple in the void, and a handsome man in a black robe appeared in the field. With his appearance, a terrifying and invisible power spread out, disturbing the wind and clouds. This man was Wu Hongxin. There's a faint aura of the realm of Tao on this person. It is very likely that he has touched the threshold of the King's Saint realm. Even if he hasn't broken through, his combat strength can be said to be the peak of the Great Saint realm. The big black bird revealed a shocked expression. Old Toad, Alu, and Xiaohao were also awestruck, revealing a solemn expression. The Great Saint realm was also divided into 3 levels: initial, middle, and late. Wu Honghai, for example, belonged to the middle of the Great Saint realm. But compared with Wu Hongxin, Wu Honghai was nothing, because Wu Hongxin was already at the peak of the consummation of the Great Saint realm, only 1 step away from stepping into the King's Saint realm. Wu Hongtian actually sent such a terrifying character to fight. It was obvious that he was stimulated by Lin Sun's previous performance. Thanks to book friend 469618842 for your generous reward, which made me the 29th leader of the Heavenly Sons. Thanks to book friend 374040253 and everyone for their rewards and monthly tickets. Goldfish, thanks everyone. Chapter 1716. The moment Wu Hongxin appeared, the morale of the Golden Crow clan was boosted. Old Toad and the others had grave expressions on their faces. One was at the Great Perfection True Saint realm, while the other was at the Great Perfection Eminent Saint realm. However, the difference between them was not as simple as a realm. Under such circumstances, Lin Sun was at an absolute disadvantage in terms of cultivation, even though he had the unique power of absolute peak. Who wouldn't be worried? 9th brother, this kid just killed your 6th brother, Honghai. Wu Hongtian quickly sent a sound transmission, informing Wu Hongxin of the situation of the battle. Hearing this, Wu Hongxin's eyes suddenly shot out a frightening, killing intent. His cold face was filled with indifference as he said, "I will make you pay with your life." Boom! His voice hadn't finished resounding through the air when he'd already charged up explosively into the sky, and his gaunt figure revealed a boundlessly large, perfect, and boundless aura. Strands of violet divine flames coiled around his body, and they caused him to emanate a dignified, divine, and lofty, imposing aura. Clang! Immediately, a pitch-black spear appeared in his hand. He pointed the tip of the spear at Lin Sun in the distance and said expressionlessly, "In my eyes, there is no difference between the strong and the weak. I will never show mercy to such a character." His voice was sonorous, and his killing intent surged into the 9 heavens. The expressions of Old Toad and the others couldn't help but change. A great sage at the peak of the Great Perfection realm caused even true sages like them to feel a suffocating pressure. Just from this point alone, it was enough to prove that Wu Hongxin was much stronger than Wu Honghai. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes slightly. At this moment, he felt a stinging pain on his skin, and at the same time, he felt an oppressive force pressing down on his face. He realized just how terrifying Wu Hongxin was. Whoosh! Without the slightest hesitation, and as if he couldn't be bothered to waste his breath, Wu Hongxin attacked, and he seemed to be incomparably direct, fierce, and powerful. His figure flashed and disappeared out of thin air. The next moment, a pitch-black spear appeared in front of Lin out of thin air. It was a simple spear, but it was as if it was held in the hands of the god of death, and it was unparalleled. Rumble! The void exploded. Lin Sun punched out, and the fist energy was like a vast abyss colliding with the spear. With a bang, Lin Sun's body was shaken and staggered back. Whoosh! Without the slightest hesitation, Wu Hongxin was cold like a god of death as he seized the opportunity to attack once more. The shadows of his spear flickered and covered the heavens and the earth. Every single spear shadow contained the terrifying energy of the great Saint Laws, and it was profound, unfathomable, and swift and fierce to the extreme. Bang! Soon, Lin Sun was shaken back again, with his blood and chi surging all over his body. As expected, he's not simple. Wu Hongxin's eyes revealed a hint of surprise. But he didn't slow down at all. Holding the spear horizontally, he didn't give Lin any chance to breathe at all. Rumble. At this time, Lin Sun had already operated all his cultivation to the extreme. His body was like a furnace of the Great Way, integrating all the mysteries of battle saint technique, fury of Yazi, leakless eternity, and so on. This was the origin of the Tao. Inheritances such as the 9 transformations of the Calamity Dragon, the profound Sword Sutra, the 9 strikes of the heaven-shaking Tao, and the first slash of the heavenly origin were also being displayed within his cauldron. This was the origin of the law. One Tao and one Dharma, deduced to an unprecedented level and released with the Great Furnace scripture, could be regarded as the most powerful means Lin Sun had mastered now. In the face of such a terrifying opponent as Wu Hongzhen, Lin Sun didn't dare to hold back. For a time, there was a turbulence above the sky. Divine light swept across, and Tao light danced wildly. In just a moment, the two had fought hundreds of times, until the sky was dark, the sun and the moon were dim, and the terrible aftermath swept across, roaring incessantly. However, Lin Sun had been at a disadvantage, constantly being shaken back and suppressed. After all, the power controlled by the Great Saint Realm was too strong. Even though Lin Sun was invincible in the peerless true Saint Realm. But in the face of Wu Hongzhen, who was at the peak of the Great Saint Realm, he still suffered a great loss in terms of cultivation. Kill. Wu Hongzhen pressed forward step by step, as if he was unstoppable. His fierce and domineering bearing caused all the experts of the Golden Crow clan to be dazzled, and they were extremely excited. Even some of the older generation were amazed and sighed with emotion. My 9th brother has been regarded as a natural cultivation seed since he was young. His talent is outstanding, and his physique is excellent. What's more rare is that his temperament is calm and cold. He is obsessed with cultivation and doesn't care about worldly affairs. In this way, he can far surpass his brothers on the road of cultivation. Wu Hongtian had a relaxed expression as he sighed with emotion. If it wasn't for this little bastard being troublesome, even I wouldn't be willing to disturb 9th brother's cultivation. After all, he's only a step away from stepping foot into the Saint King realm. His voice was full of pride. The nearby Golden Crow experts nodded in agreement. Wu Hongzhen was indeed an anomaly among the old monsters of the Golden Crow branch. His foundation and combat strength could be called the peak of the Great Saint Realm. The situation is not good. At the same time, Old Toad, Alu, and Xiaohao couldn't help but worry. The gap was too obvious. The peerless true Saint Realm could kill ordinary great saints across realms, which was already shocking. For example, Lin Sun's killing of Wu Honghai just now seemed very heaven-defying. But this time, his opponents were all at the peak of the Great Saint Realm. It was almost impossible to kill them across realms. In fact, Lin Sun had also discovered this fact at this point in the battle. His combat strength could be said to be invincible in the true Saint Realm, and he could kill a great saint like Wu Honghai across realms. But to kill someone like Wu Hongzhen across realms, it was already impossible. Kill. Wu Hongzhen swept his spear and attacked again. From the beginning to the end, he had been chasing Lin Sun relentlessly, pressing him step by step, and this time was no exception. He looked cold and emotionless, but in his heart, he could not believe it. Normally, a true saint would not be taken seriously at all. But now, Lin Sun was actually able to withstand his attacks until now. This greatly surprised and shocked him, and when he attacked, he became more and more impolite, full of killing intent. If such a heaven-defying little monster was allowed to survive, it went without saying that he was bound to become a great threat to the Golden Crow branch. Boom! Wu Hongzhen's spear was like lightning, thunder, wind, and fire, wantonly attacking. Faintly, there was an extremely vague aura of the realm of Tao. Lin Sun's pressure doubled. In a moment, this boy will die without a doubt. Wu Jintian, who was watching the battle in the distance, made an inference and vowed. Many people nodded. Everyone could see that Lin Sun was just a cornered beast fighting, not far from death. Bang! When he was shaken back again, Lin Sun's black eyes were filled with coldness. He suddenly looked up at the sky, and a voice came out from his lips. Tribulation is coming. It was just 2 words, but it seemed to have a strange power that shook people's hearts, surging above the 9th heaven. Wu Hongzhen, who was originally rushing to kill Lin Sun, seemed to be aware of something. His body suddenly stopped moving, and he suddenly retreated far away. He also looked up at the sky, revealing a look of disbelief. Almost at the same time, all the people present felt a throb in their hearts, and looked up at the sky in unison. Then, the azure sky suddenly darkened, and ink-like tribulation clouds gathered at an incredible speed. The daytime seemed to fall into an eternal night. The tribulation clouds were as heavy as lead, funnel-shaped, rotating slowly in the sky, silent, but with the supreme breath of the way of heaven. All the people present, regardless of their cultivation, were frightened, and there was a sign of restlessness and disorder in their state of mind. Moreover, the higher one's cultivation was, the more terrifying the feeling was. "Retreat! Get away from here!" Wu Hongtian roared. There was no need to remind everyone present to avoid this area. Even Old Toad, Alu, and the others were shocked and doubtful, and stayed far away. The breath of this tribulation made them feel frightened and uneasy. Boom! In the depths of the tribulation clouds, a muffled thunder sounded, rumbling and surging, and all things were chilling. Many strong practitioners only felt a buzzing sound in their ears, and saw stars in front of their eyes. The sound of the tribulation thunder almost made them lose control of their Taoist heart. Even old monsters like Wu Hongtian were terrified, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. What kind of tribulation was this? Why was the breath so heaven-defying? It was even like the gathering of taboo force. Xiaohao's eyes were shining, and he looked shocked. He murmured, "Brother Lin is walking on the road of integration of 3 paths. He broke the killing of the forbidden Tao long ago and became a saint in the 3 paths of qi refining, body refining, and spirit refining. This path once existed during the primeval times of the ancient desolation region, yet it was severed after that. Until now, only Brother Lin has stepped foot onto such a heaven-defying path towards the Tao in the entire ancient desolation region. What he is facing now must be the Great Saint Tribulation, which is naturally far from being comparable to ordinary people. Even a saint who has reached the end of the path can't trigger such a rare, great tribulation. But why does Brother Lin suddenly want to cross the tribulation at this time? Doesn't he know that once he is disturbed by external forces, he is very likely to fail the tribulation and end up in ashes? Xiaohao frowned. He couldn't understand Lin Sun more and more. Others were also surprised and doubtful. Boom! In the sky, the tribulation clouds became darker and darker. In the depths of the black clouds, dazzling tribulation thunder as thick as pythons and dragons rolled and surged. Strangely, these tribulation thunder sometimes turned into palaces, sacred trees, fierce birds, beasts, and sometimes into sabers, spears, swords, halberds, seals, pagodas, and cauldrons. In the end, illusory figures emerged, like the thunder spirits in myths and legends, patrolling in the tribulation clouds. The shocking scenes caused everyone present to gasp and feel a chill run down their spines. They had never heard of such a great tribulation, not to mention knowing it. There was almost no similar record in the historical books. Wu Hongzhen had to give up the plan of continuing to attack Lin Sun and stay far away. His expression was uncertain, with surprise and coldness. He didn't expect that Lin Sun would cross the Great Saint Tribulation at this time and attract such an incredible tribulation. Did this guy want to kill himself with the power of the Thunder Tribulation? Wu Hongzhen couldn't help sneering at the thought of this. The trick of killing people with the help of the Thunder Tribulation had existed since ancient times, but most strong people underestimated the horror of the Thunder Tribulation and eventually killed themselves. If Lin Sun dared to do so, Wu Hongzhen absolutely wouldn't mind adding oil to the fire and interfering with it, so that Lin Sun would be completely killed by the Thunder Tribulation. In the distant sky, Lin Sun stood in the void. His expression was neither sad nor happy, like an ancient well without ripples, as if he was unaware of all this. This tribulation of breaking the realm was originally within his control, and it was one of the reasons why he came to the branch of Golden Crow. Fourth update. Please ask for monthly votes from the children. Chapter 17:18. The thunder tribulation became more and more terrifying. The vast sky had already turned dark, as if it had fallen into the eternal night. The oppressive aura of the tribulation made many cultivators feel like their minds were about to collapse. If possible, Wu Hengtian and all the other Golden Crow powerhouses, of course, hoped that this peerless tribulation would kill Lin Sun in one fell swoop. At this moment, Lin Sun suddenly moved. Everyone who was paying attention to this scene couldn't help but be stunned. The thunder tribulation hadn't descended yet, but Lin Sun moved first. What was he going to do? Swish! Lin Sun suddenly stretched his body and looked up at the sky. His black hair fluttered, and a great abyss appeared in his tall figure, devouring the sky. At this moment, everyone was stunned. Was he going to devour this peerless tribulation? Wu Hengtian couldn't help but gasp. After living for so many years, this was the first time he saw such a bold and even crazy young man. This was a peerless tribulation that had never been recorded in the ancient books. It was unprecedented and terrifying to the point that even a great saint like him was terrified. But Lin Sun actually regarded this thunder tribulation as his prey, and he wanted to devour it. This, Xiaohao Ruowu, Yu Jianming, Mi Hengzhen, and the others were also dumbfounded. Wasn't Lin Sun too cruel? This was no different from throwing his life away. As for the powerhouses of the Golden Crow clan, a thought emerged in their minds at the same time. Was this guy crazy? Boom! In the sky, the tribulation clouds surged, and the tribulation thunder surged, emitting a supreme aura of order, as if it was infuriated. But at this moment, in Lin Sun's eyes, this vast and incomparable thunder tribulation was nothing more than this. And in his mind, the profound meaning of big surged like a tide. Great saint, big and immeasurable, the beauty of heaven and earth is unspoken. The great Tao in the heart is immeasurable. This big can accommodate all rivers into the sea, can accommodate all things. The great saint realm is comprehending size at will. I am immeasurable. The heart is bigger than the sky, and the strength can surpass the sky, cover the sky, look down on all the heavens. Is the great wall of Imperial Pass smaller? No, it is you who have become big. Big, big, expand. Sir Shan's deafening voice seemed to still be lingering by his ears. The scenes he saw in Imperial Pass seemed to have appeared before his eyes one after another. In Lin Sun's eyes, the vast and peerless thunder tribulation that covered the sky seemed so small. Did the lightning tribulation become smaller? No. This was because Lin Sun had comprehended the essence of nature. At the moment of passing the tribulation, his state of mind, strength, experience, and cultivation all changed accordingly. To put it simply, he had become bigger. Boom! The great abyss anomaly swallowed up the heavens, and in that instant, it seemed to have become limitless. Then, this great catastrophe was completely engulfed by Lin Sun's power of the abyss before it came, covering the sky and covering the sun, devouring the great calamity. All the experts who witnessed such a shocking scene were dumbfounded. He actually really swallowed it? Rumble. The abyss revolved and produced terrifying rumbling sounds. Obviously, this was a tribulation that represented the heavenly Tao, and it was unwilling to be resolved in such a shocking manner. It was struggling to kill Lin Sun, the heretic. Instead of retreating, Lin Sun suddenly stepped up into the air and shouted. His figure seemed to have become infinitely tall in an instant, with matchless divine courage and boundless disdain. The abyss that swallowed the tribulation was instantly absorbed into Lin Sun's body. It gave people the feeling that Lin Sun had opened his mouth and swallowed a peerless tribulation that belonged to the great saint realm. It was shocking. If such a scene was spread out, it would probably drive all the practitioners in the ancient desolation territory crazy. After all, it was too shocking. In the sky, Lin Sun's body was shining with incomparable brilliance. Every inch of his pores was flowing with brilliant Taoist light, and bursts of surging thunder came out of his body and spread in all directions. There was no doubt that the terrible power of this thunder tribulation was colliding in his body, and it hadn't been completely refined. This made Old Toad, Alu, and the others tense up. They had never heard of such an incredible thing as swallowing a peerless tribulation and absorbing it into his own body. But they were very clear that once Lin Sun was a little careless and let this tribulation explode in his body, there was absolutely no chance for him to survive. Far away, Wu Hongjin's eyes flickered with killing intent, as if he was about to make a move. This was undoubtedly an excellent opportunity. However, he gave up in the end. It was very simple. Once Lin Sun died, the power of the tribulation in his body would suddenly disperse. Once he was affected, the consequences would be so serious that Wu Hongjin couldn't bear it. Little bastard, if you can't hold on, just give up. You want to swallow the tribulation and refine it? I've never seen a person like you who seeks death. Wu Hongtian sneered and shouted, using his voice to interfere with Lin Sun. So what if you're the number one in the 9 regions battlefield? In front of my Golden Crow bloodline, you'll inevitably be struck by lightning and die a horrible death. Someone sneered. Lin Sun, I heard that you have a lot of female confidence. When you die, we'll help you take care of those poor women. Someone's words were insidious and obscene. For a moment, all kinds of voices resounded, and their purpose was the same. They wanted to disturb Lin Sun's state of mind, distract his experience, and make him die tragically in the tribulation. None of these old bastards and little bastards are good things. Old Toad swore angrily. Xiao Hao, Ruo Wu, and the others also revealed a cold expression. This method was really too despicable and shameless. Boom! Suddenly, a dazzling tribulation thunder flew out from Lin Sun's body in the sky. It evolved into a sharp axe and descended at an incredible speed. A strong practitioner of the Golden Crow bloodline couldn't dodge in time and was directly killed. His body was blown to pieces and his soul scattered. This person was the guy who had just spoken in an insidious and obscene manner. This sudden scene caused everyone to be shocked. Looking at the sky again, Lin Sun's sleeves fluttered in the wind. His body was as clear and pure as colored glass. He stood there casually, but he gave people a feeling of boundless greatness. He was as lofty as a mountain leading to the sky and as vast as a boundless ocean. He was obviously completely different from before. No matter if it was his aura, or aura, all of them had a type of boundless majesty to him. This was the breath of the great sage. Moreover, it was the unique charm of the great sage. His every move was like an invisible elephant, which was incomparable to the great sage. Did he succeed in passing the tribulation? Wu Hongtian's eyeballs almost fell out, and he almost jumped up. How could this be possible? Such an earth-shattering calamity was swallowed and refined in one gulp, just like that. Countless people in the surroundings were shocked by this scene. Kill! Wu Hongjin reacted the fastest, and he acted almost immediately. A strong practitioner who had just passed the tribulation was also the weakest time. If Lin Sun recovered, there were bound to be a lot of variables. He moved in the void with the spear in his hand, and his means were unparalleled. Lin Sun showed a touch of sarcasm. He waved his sleeve. Boom! The power of the tribulation that had been swallowed by him suddenly rushed out like a flood, turning into palaces, plants, mountains, and rivers. Lightning flashed, dazzling. Wu Hongjin's face changed abruptly. This guy obviously didn't refine the power of the tribulation, but used it at this moment. In a deafening roar, Wu Hongjin, who couldn't dodge in time, was struck by the tribulation thunder. His body trembled, and his flesh was charred, emitting wisps of green smoke. Roasting the great sage Golden Crow. I like it. Alu laughed. You're courting death. Wu Hongjin was furious. His spear transformed into millions of golden threads of flame. each of which was hazy, but emitted a terrifying aura of incineration. I was just using you as a whetstone to practice my skills. Now, I'll send you on your way. Lin Sun didn't retreat, but advanced. He took a step forward, and the abyss emerged, evolving into layers of tribulation thunder and spread out in an overwhelming manner. In an instant, the tribulation thunder rolled in the sky, as if it had returned to the beginning of the tribulation. However, the power of the tribulation thunder was completely controlled by Lin Sun, making its power extremely terrifying. Boom, boom, boom. Under the bombardment of the tribulation thunder, Wu Hongzhen soon couldn't hold on any longer. His body was cracked, dripping with blood, and his bones could be seen. He roared angrily and attacked crazily. But in the end, it was all in vain. Even if he was at the peak of the great sage realm, how could he withstand the power of such a peerless tribulation? It should be known that this tribulation was prepared for Lin Sun, and it was far from ordinary. It involved the forbidden road of peerless Tao, and the power of the tribulation was beyond imagination. Not to mention Wu Hongzhen. Even if another peerless great sage was here, it would be difficult for him to withstand the power of the way of heaven. Finally, Wu Hongzhen, who sensed the fatal threat, wanted to escape without hesitation. This battle was too depressing. His opponent was no longer Lin Sun, but a peerless tribulation. How could he defeat it? Die! But just as he was about to escape, Lin Sun came through the void, and a big abyss, like a curtain covering the sky, enveloped Wu Hongzhen. No! Wu Hongzhen screamed in shock and anger, but with a bang, his whole body was crushed into powder by the tribulation thunder and swallowed in the big abyss. His body and soul were both destroyed. An old monster who was about to set foot on the Saint King realm, the most powerful person in the Great Sage realm with a high reputation in the Golden Crow clan. He was killed just like that. He was unable to struggle even at the moment of death. For a moment, the world was dead silent, and everyone was shocked. Wu Hongtian's hands and feet were cold, and his eyes were full of disbelief. The other Golden Crow clan strongmen were also horrified, and almost all of them were scared out of their wits. Probably no one had expected that even a figure like Wu Hongzhen would end up in ashes in the end. Cruel. Big Brother is too cruel. I suspect that he had planned to do this a long time ago. Otherwise, how could he so skillfully play with a peerless tribulation in the palm of his hand? Old Toad clicked his tongue. Everyone else agreed. Those who had fought side by side with Lin Sun in the Nine Regions battlefield knew that this guy never fought a battle without preparation. The death of Wu Hongzhen in front of them was the best proof. However, when they thought that Lin Sun would kill the enemy in such an incredible way, they couldn't help but feel dazzled and confused. At this point, after Wu Honghai, Wu Hongzhen was also killed, and Lin Sun was only one battle away from rescuing the spirit of the insignificant spiritual Bao, Tian Ke. The 5th chapter is here. Swallowing Heaven's Retribution. Isn't this awesome? At least I haven't seen this in other novels.